Have you ever felt the ground fall away beneath you in one heart-stopping moment? I did. The day I discovered the betrayal that turned my world upside down. It was a revelation that came with the sharp sting of deception, capturing my deepest fears and darkest moments. "How could you destroy everything we've built together?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper amidst the chaos of shattered trust. "This is my story. Enjoy watching it." One day, by pure chance, truth showed its face. Coming back from work sick, I sprawled on the couch in the family room, eyes shut. I had just parked in the garage, and since it was a chilly day, I closed the garage door after me. My wife Janice had no clue I was home when she arrived, leaving her car outside. She and her sister Carla entered through the front door and moved to the kitchen. The couch I was on had its back to the entry. They couldn't spot me resting there. I thought of getting up to greet them, but a wave of nausea hit, and I had to lie back down until it passed. In the meantime, bits and pieces of their conversation reached me. It seemed Janice had stopped by to show Carla a new dress for their yearly Chicago trip. For the past 4 years, they'd escaped to the Windy City, leaving Carla's husband Bob and me to watch the kids. We felt they deserved a break from taking care of our young ones. I'm Jim, by the way, married to Janice for 7 years, and we have 2 sons, Ryan, 5, and Sean, 2. I work as a middle manager at a logistic company, and we're doing all right financially. Janice is as beautiful as ever, even after 2 kids. Our love life was vibrant. I believed we were the perfect pair with a flawless marriage. Carla and Bob lived just a few streets away, and we did almost everything together. Carla looked a lot like Janice, just a bit younger, and they were thick as thieves. They have a daughter, Melissa, who's 3. Here's how it all unfolded, slowly revealing a hidden truth in an everyday scene, showing how even the closest relationships have their secrets. Lying there, waiting for my sick feeling to fade, I heard Carla's voice light up about the dress my wife showed her. "Wow, that's a hot dress. Has Jim seen it? And does he know you're bringing it on the trip?" "No. He'd get all worried if he saw. So keep it quiet." "Sure thing. Randy's going to love it." Who in the world was Randy? As my stomach's turmoil eased, I stayed still, ears open for more. "You got something for Mark too?" my wife asked. "Mark? Who's Mark?" "Oh, I've got some fancy underwear Bob doesn't know about. It'll drive him wild," Carla said. "And I've got some stuff Jim hasn't seen that will really excite Randy." Oh no, I realized. They must be cheating. And it seemed they knew these men well. My heart sank at the thought. Who were these guys? How long had this been going on? As I tried to digest these revelations, they kept talking. "You sticking with the pill then?" "Yeah, 1 kid from Randy is enough. Lucky he and Jim look so alike. Even Jim's mom says Sean is just like Jim." I felt a punch to the gut. My sickness returned full force. Struggling to keep it together, I heard them leave. I rushed to the bathroom as the door shut, barely making it before I threw up. Grateful the lid was up, I let it all out. Everything in me seemed to come up. The dry heaves went on even after there was nothing left. This shock had me spinning. My wife and Carla tangled in lies. Secrets about other men had hit me hard. The talk of kids looking like someone else twisted a knife in my heart. How long had these secrets been kept? The trust I had was crumbling fast. And here I was, grappling with truths too heavy to hold. All I could do was piece together what I heard, as waves of emotion hit me like a storm. I realized I needed proof of the cheating and had to leave before Janice got home. Quickly, I used some room spray in the bathroom, grabbed my coat and sprinted to the garage. I jumped in my car, hit the garage door opener, and zoomed down the street, closing the door behind me. I ended up in a mall parking lot, sitting in my car, lost in thought about my next move. I thought about calling my brother-in-law Bob to spill the beans about what I had heard, but part of me couldn't accept that Janice could cheat on me and that Sean might not be my kid. My stomach was in knots, but anger was starting to bubble up inside me as I stewed over her fling with some dude named Randy. What was I supposed to say to Bob about Carla and Mark? I knew I needed to talk to a lawyer as soon as possible to figure out what to do if things headed toward a divorce. The girls were taking their trip in 4 days. Time was running out. Making moves, I grabbed my phone and dialed my buddy Jerry Matthews, who was also my lawyer and a friend since high school. I asked his secretary Helen if I could see him ASAP. Helen knows me well enough to catch the urgency in my voice and asked if I could make it there in 15 minutes. I agreed and rushed over. Stepping into Jerry's office, Helen caught one glimpse of me and blurted out, "Jim, you look awful." "I just got some really bad news, Helen, and I feel like I'm getting sick. Can I see him now?" "Yes, go right in," she said, visibly worried as she looked at me. I hurried past her and after a quick knock, barged into Jerry's private office. Jerry stood up and motioned for me to sit down across from him. "My God, Jim, what happened? You look like you've been run over." "Jerry, I've been hit hard. Part of it I might shake off, but the other part—" "I'm not so sure," I said as he sat back down. "Spill it," he said, leaning in. "At first, let me tell you, I feel like I'm getting sick. Then I've got trouble with Janice. I need some help." "Don't worry about the sickness. I've had my flu shot. And Janice, well, that's a shock. You two seemed so perfect ever since you got married. But go on. Tell me." I shared what I had found out that day, and Jerry was taken aback. "It's hard to see Janice or Carla doing such a thing. If Janice really went and had a baby with another man, that's huge. What's on your mind? Thinking of splitting up? Or do you believe you can get past this, her mistake and the child?" "Right now, I can't see myself forgiving her. Look, divorce isn't what I do, but I know someone good who does. They can guide you through it, if that's what you want. Proof is crucial, though, for both the cheating and the child's real dad. Should I reach out to them for you?" "Yes, please." My voice broke, the weight of my decision hitting me hard. Jerry looked saddened as he called his assistant. "Helen, can you get Sam Ridley on the phone for me?" Hearing my plea, Helen gasped, "Oh no!" But soon Jerry was talking to Sam. "Sam, it's Jerry. Can you spare a moment tomorrow morning to see a friend of mine with a big problem?" After a brief wait, Jerry turned to me. "How's 9 in the morning at Sam's? We're in the same building. It's a bit late today." "Okay, I'll be there." I nodded. Maybe head home and play it cool with Janice. This could all be a big mix-up, and you wouldn't want to mess up your marriage over it. "You're right. I need to keep it together until I know for sure." "Thanks, Jerry." Standing up, he held my hand tight. "I'm really sorry you're going through this, Jim. In this tale, the sting of betrayal and the anguish of facing a possible end to what once seemed a perfect union are brought forward through simple language. The protagonist grapples with a troubling revelation, seeking counsel from a trusted friend. In the backdrop, suggestions to preserve the facade of normalcy hint at the internal conflict between the urge to confront and the hope for an improbable mistake, a reflection of how deeply personal crises can tug at our rational and emotional selves. Me and Janice have been best pals for ages. Your sad is my sad. Thanks, Jerry. I'll call you with updates. Helen had tears in her eyes as I left. I'm so sorry, Jim. Thanks, Helen. Back home, I got in at my usual time, so Janice didn't think it was odd, but she saw my face right away. Jim, dear, you look awful. Are you okay? I wanted to snap at her, to make her feel my pain over her maybe cheating. Instead, I said, I think I'm sick. Then, with a bit of spite and a fake smile, I hope I'm not sick long so you can go on your trip. She looked worried for a sec, but got over it quick. You might just have a bad cold. You should be fine by Friday. I hope so. I feel so bad, I just want to sleep. Can we have dinner later? Of course, honey. Go change and rest. Why didn't you come home early? I was swamped at work. That was a lie. Take some aspirin and I'll check on you later. The kids had fun at daycare today. Carla and I hit the shops like we do, and I found the cutest sandals, but they were not my size, so I bought nothing. My head was heavy with illness and sorrow as I made my way up to our room. I stayed away from the kids. Didn't even want to see Sean. What if he wasn't mine? What then? I remembered Janice didn't want to be close before and after that trip 3 years ago because she said she was dealing with an infection. She had tricked him into having her baby. The weight of her deceit was tough to bear. I didn't open my eyes until the sun was up again. I felt a bit better, thinking maybe it was just a 24-hour bug. But then, the memory of what I'd found out hit me hard, dragging me down. I glanced at Janice, still asleep beside me. She seemed so calm, so pure. It was hard to picture her with someone else. Yet I knew I had to face that might be the real deal. I made my way to the shower, got dressed, and prepared for the day ahead. Skipping any interaction at home, I grabbed a coffee and left early. The sounds of Janice with our kids floated down as I stepped out, but I couldn't bear to join them just yet. I grabbed breakfast at a diner, then headed to work, trying to dive into work tasks. Around 8:30, I told my boss I needed a few hours off. He gave me a nod, asking how I was feeling, noting I looked rough yesterday. He meant my health, but my mind was stuck on Janice and everything else. By 9, I was at Sam's office, his secretary ushering me in. Sam liked a casual setup for meetings, thinking it eased clients. Easy chairs, a low table, and he offered decaf coffee as we settled in. "In this line of work," he started, "I believe comfort helps. Divorce is tricky, takes a lot out of you. Let's hear your story, and we'll figure out the next steps." I took a cup of his coffee and began to unwind my tale. The task now was not just recounting the events, but weaving them into a narrative that Sam could follow. I dived into the details of my discovery, the emotional turmoil it wrought, and my inability to reconcile with Janice's actions. Throughout, Sam listened with a practiced ear, his nods encouraging me to unravel the full extent of my distress and the complex feelings entangling me. The session turned not just into a factual recounting, but a cathartic release, a first step in confronting the tangled web of betrayal, hurt, and the daunting path to healing and decisions that lay ahead. After I shared my heart, he paused, then asked softly, "Do you still hold love for your wife?" I thought my love for her was as big as life, but now, when I think about what she might have done, I feel cold, empty, and mad. It's like she's turned into a stranger. I hope it's all a bad dream, and I'll wake up to find everything's fine. Plus, I can't stop worrying about our kids. They mean everything to me. Well, we must get to the bottom of whether she's been unfaithful. If the whispers are true, you'll then need to decide on a divorce. We'll have to hire someone to watch her in Chicago this weekend. It might cost a bit, so consider asking your brother-in-law to split the bill. If it turns out true, we're solving two big problems at once. Also, we should check if your kids are truly yours with a DNA test. Suggest the same to your brother-in-law, but chat with him later. Let's meet again, with him here. I don't want to tell Bob before our wives head out. Right now, Janice thinks I'm acting off because of the flu. If I tell Bob and he acts weird around Carla, they might get suspicious. That's logical. Can you give me your wife's travel plans so I can pass them to the detective? Knowing her hotel and, if possible, her room would help. They usually book the same room each year, so I'll find that info along with any travel plans. They fly, right? Then use taxis or shuttles there? Yes, that's their usual way. Makes it easier to follow them. Now about your money, you know what you need to do, right? I think I get it. With each of us dealing with our own storm of feelings, the plan was clear. Uncover the truth, safeguard what was mine, and prepare for whatever may come. The journey ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face whatever the truth might reveal. Guard what's yours. We must think the news you got is spot on. Everywhere your wife can touch, the shared bank stuff, cards. Think on switching those who'll get your insurance money to your kids. It's not unheard of. A partner finding out a split is coming and then wiping out all cash. You can swap it back if things smooth over. Make the joint account nice enough for her to get by until she lands a job or a new place to stay. That's your call. When you chat with her brother, give him a gentle nudge too. When we sit down for the divorce talk, we'll aim to divide up what both of you have. I'll handle our side today. That's the plan then. I'm crossing my fingers. This is all just smoke without a fire for you, but if the dirt turns out true, you should be set to keep your oldest boy without much fuss. All right, thanks, Sam. I'll have that travel plan to you by tomorrow. After stepping out from Sam's place, my first stop was the bank. I shut down our joint savings and CDs, transferring everything into an account just in my name. I left a mere $1,000 in our shared check account and slid the rest into my savings. Then it was off to see my stock guy, shifting our investments into my sole account. He threw me worried looks, but I kept my mouth shut. I thought about killing our credit cards, but worried if one got declined in Chicago, it might tip them off. So I decided to wait until I got the scoop from the PI. Back at work, I tried to dive into tasks, but my mind was elsewhere. Lunch went untouched. Was it the lingering flu or the nausea at the thought of my wife with someone else? My head was a mess of rage and stress. I knew I had to keep my cool. Leaving Sam's advice ringing in my ears, I felt like I was walking through a fog. The steps I took, draining joint accounts, changing who'd get the insurance, gave me a semblance of control but also stoked the fire in my stomach. Each action was a hard swallow, a step further away from the life I knew. Home felt like a distant target. My mind raced with the imagery of betrayal. Yet amidst the turmoil, a simple hope flickered. Let this all be a massive misunderstanding. Tomorrow, I'd send off my travel plans to Sam, another step in a journey I never anticipated embarking on. When I got back that night, I acted as if I was still sick. Janice seemed worried. "You should have stayed home today. Going to work wasn't smart." "I didn't want you or the kids to catch this. If you got sick, you might miss your trip with Carla this weekend." I watched her closely for any sign. "You might be right. Maybe you should sleep in the other room for now until you're better." I couldn't believe her. She was just making sure nothing would mess up her plans to meet her lover this weekend. Keeping my suspicion hidden for the next couple of days was going to be tough. I managed to eat some dinner and then headed to the computer to check my emails instead of watching TV. While I was at it, I decided to check Janice's emails too and found she had changed her password. After some guessing, I figured it out. It was Sean's name and birthday. When I got in, it was as if I'd struck gold. There were emails from someone named Randim. I saved them to print out later and read a few right then. They confirmed my worst fears. She was cheating. They must have been planning their weekend. They could also be talking on the phone while I was out. Most of their plans seemed set, so tapping the phone now wouldn't add much. The emails were proof enough of their deceit. All I could do was wait. The weekend, the next day, I sent the plans I found in the emails to Sam by fax and tried to act normal at work, but it was hard. Both my boss and my secretary could tell something was off, but only asked if I was feeling unwell. I said I was just struggling to get better and kept working. After reading Janice's emails with RN I printed them and sent them to Sam in the mail. They'd been sneaking off to this same meetup for 4 years. This time, Randy and Mark bunked in one room, and next door, Janice and Carla did the same. This setup let each pair of lovers get close in private. They booked these exact rooms every year, so I handed the room numbers to Sam since he wanted to know. Turns out, Randy and Mark had wives back in Milwaukee. They made this trip for the Chicago Boat Show every year, leaving their wives to take care of the kids at home. Then came Friday. Janice and Carla were set to drive to the airport in Carla's car around noon, leaving it parked there until they returned on Sunday. I made my way to the kitchen early. There was Janice, fixing up bacon and eggs, not the usual cereal I'd have. It seemed like she wanted to start the day with something special. "I thought to make a good breakfast before I head out. I've been worried about you. You've barely eaten all week. That flu really took a toll, huh? I'm sorry we couldn't be close this week. I appreciate you trying to keep me and the kids safe. By Sunday, you should be better and I'll make it up to you," she said. "Thanks, Jan. I'll be waiting," I replied with a light kiss on her cheek. She seemed happy. "Just remember, you need to start looking after the kids by noon so we can head to the airport." "Sure," I said, a bit gruffly. I almost let my guard down because of my thoughts about her weekend plans. "Something wrong, Jim?" "You seem upset with me," she asked. No, just a throat thing." "Had to clear it," I said, trying to smile and seem okay. She gave me a puzzled look, but I stayed calm and paid attention as she went back to her talking. This setup I found myself in, knowing about their yearly escapes, added a layer of complexity to my days. Passing on the info to Sam was my way of dealing with it, hoping somehow it would help untangle the web of secrets. As Janice and Carla prepared for their trip, I faced the reality of the family dynamics shifting under the weight of these hidden escapades. The facade of normalcy I maintained with Janice that morning was a testament to the intricate dance of truths and lies we navigate in our lives. After my morning meal, I slipped into my suit jacket, grabbed my case, and made for the garage. "Wouldn't you say goodbye with a kiss?" she asked, eyeing me oddly once more. I knew I had to give it my all or she'd get suspicious, so I turned, let go of the case, held her close, and kissed her deeply. My gut churned, but I pushed past it, showing her all the love and trust I could muster. It seemed to work. As I pulled back, she said, "Wow, dear. Why not skip work this morning and have some fun together like we do on Sundays?" "I'd love to, but I need to work at least half the day," I replied, kissed her again softly on the cheek, scooped up my case, and proceeded to the garage. She looked happy as I left, so I hoped she wasn't doubting anything anymore. If she could play the devoted wife a bit longer, so could I. By noon, I was back home and Jan had lunch ready. We talked as she packed her bags at the door. "I hope you girls keep out of trouble," I said, trying to sound lighthearted. "We always do, honey, but it doesn't hurt to look at the handsome guys there," she joked. "Just make sure it's only looking," I said, then more seriously added, "It would destroy me if you were unfaithful. I don't think I could handle it. Our marriage surely wouldn't." Her face fell, but she managed to smile. "You know I've been true to you, Jim, and that's how it'll always be." "I know, but you're gorgeous, and I know men must hit on you, and I understand a housewife might get bored." She turned a bit pale, but embraced me. Just then, Carla honked from the street, announcing her arrival. She gave me a peck on the lips and turned to leave. I thought I saw a tear in her eye as I grabbed her bags and followed her out to Carla's car. Minutes later, I watched the car drive away, and we waved our goodbyes, perhaps for the last time. After feeding the kids, I called Bob and let him know I'd be stopping by. He said okay, so I got the kids ready and drove over to his place, bringing along a printout of Jan's emails. When we got there, Bob was just finishing up with his little one, Melissa. He greeted us with a big grin. "Hey, everyone," he welcomed us. "Head to the living room. We can watch something fun with the kids." "I can't stay long, Bob. We need to chat. Let's let the kids play in the living room." He gave me a puzzled look, but did as I suggested. "What's going on? And what's that you're holding?" he asked, nodding at the emails in my hand. "This is for you," I said as we took seats at the kitchen table. "But first, I've got some tough news. Keep calm for me, okay? Is it bad? Like, are you really sick? No, it's not that. But this might ruin our marriages." Bob went white as a sheet and fell silent. I shared with him the conversation I'd overheard between our wives a few days back and handed over the emails. "Oh no, oh no," he kept saying as he went through the emails, which backed up everything I had said. I felt for him. I knew how much he cared for Carla just as much as I loved Janice. When he finished, he buried his face in his hands and cried. I then told him about Sam, the investigator from Chicago, what I had done about our finances, and that I was on my way to a local clinic to get DNA tests for me and the kids to check if I was really their dad. I asked if he wanted to come along. The idea that Melissa might not be his hadn't struck him until then. He suddenly stood up quick and ran to the bathroom, and I heard the sound of him throwing up his lunch, followed by the harsh sounds of nothing left to come up. It was just like what happened to me a few days back, but I had the flu then, so I wasn't sure why it happened. Now it was clear. After he felt a bit better, he agreed to join us. He looked really sick as we got the kids ready and into the car to head to the clinic. The folks there were really good at their jobs and just used swabs to take a little bit of our spit for the tests. I also asked them to take some blood from me and the kids, just so we'd know our blood types for sure. They said they'd send over the results by next Wednesday. Once we left the clinic, we drove to Bob's bank where he took care of some important stuff with his accounts. He also mentioned he'd call his stock person and insurance guy from his home phone later on. On the way back, I asked if he'd like to spend the weekend at our place. I didn't think it was good for him to be alone right now. He thought about it for a moment and agreed, but wanted to stop by his place first to grab a few things for the weekend. After doing that, we headed to our place. The kids didn't have a clue about the stress we were under, and we wanted to keep it that way for as long as we could to not upset their lives. Welcome home back at home. Bob and I had a long talk in the kitchen about how to deal with finding out our wives had been lying for 4 years. We planned to act normal when they got back and wait for the investigator's report and the DNA test results before figuring out what to do next. I knew we'd have to act like everything was okay, which meant being close with our wives, even though the thought made me unsure if I could even be physically close to Janice again. Bob felt the same, but mentioned he had some Viagra from when he had a similar issue a few months back that could help us out. The weight of their betrayal sat heavy on us, and each moment felt more challenging than the last. We clung to the hope that the truth would give us some direction. For now, the plan was to keep our pain hidden and wait for the right moment to face the truth, armed with all the facts. I promised him that I'd grab a few things after I dropped off him and Melissa at their place on Sunday. Our weekend was quiet and cozy. Jan and Carla would call each night and we'd pretend to be happy to talk to them. They thought it was great that Bob, the kids, and I spent time together. Jan even said, "We should do this next year too." In my head, I doubted there would be a next year. That Sunday afternoon, after dropping Bob and Melissa off, I picked up some Viagra before heading back. Around 4 p.m., I heard a car honk outside. It was Jan coming back, all smiles. Despite feeling unsure, I matched her cheerfulness. The kids were thrilled to see her, and she spent some time catching up with them. Meanwhile, I took her bags into our bedroom and started unpacking. Among her things, I found her dirty clothes, mostly her underwear. I held my breath as I checked, looking for any signs of cheating, but found none. This didn't really prove anything, and so I rejoined my family for dinner out. That night, once the kids were asleep, she found me in the living room and led me upstairs with a promising smile. "Why don't you get undressed?" she suggested, heading into the bathroom. It was decision time. Not wanting to take any risks, I popped a Viagra. Soon I felt ready and waited for her in bed. She returned wearing an unfamiliar short black nightie that barely covered her. The next day, a call from Sam at work broke the silence of the morning. He had news. The investigator got video and photos of Janice with Randy and Carla with Mark. The full report, with all the proof, would reach Sam by Wednesday. The thought made my stomach twist, and not because of any flu. Sam's next ask was for a meetup with both Bob and me to talk over what steps to take next. I promised to reach out to Bob and update him. When I rang Bob at his job and shared what Sam had unveiled about the investigator's findings and the proposed meeting, I could hear him sob through the phone. It took a bit for him to pull himself together. After a short talk, we landed on the idea of waiting for the DNA test results, also due Wednesday, so we opted for a Thursday meeting with Sam. I let Sam know, and we penciled in Thursday at 9 a.m. for our discussion. Through the week, Jan didn't hint at wanting CC, and my desire had flatlined. Come Thursday, Bob and I walked into Sam's office to find he had prepared a video showing on the agenda, given the TV setup in the corner near his desk. We greeted each other quietly, then took our seats as instructed in front of the TV. Sam offered to play the video silently, unless we wished otherwise. We opted for a silent first watch. The screen flickered to life, revealing an aerial view of a bed. A man, anonymous to me and visibly aroused, lay on his back. His size seemed average, comparable to mine. The video was shockingly clear, hinting at a high-grade camera. Then, a woman in a black short nightgown entered the frame, straddling him. It was Jan, unmistakable as the day. She went on to engage with him intimately. This scoop Sam dropped felt like a heavy weight. The anticipation leading up to Wednesday had been a mix of nerves and dread, my mind racing with what the evidence would reveal. The reality, however, hit harder than I expected. Here we were, sat before a screen that laid bare truths we'd hoped were just shadows of doubt. The meeting that followed, filled with discussions on what to do next, seemed to stretch on indefinitely, our minds grappling with the roots laid before us. The journey from suspicion to confirmation was grueling, yet here we stood at the crossroads, the path ahead daunting but necessary to tread. He must have been really turned on because he finished fast in her mouth, and I watched her throat as she swallowed. I felt so sick that I rushed to Sam's bathroom to throw up my breakfast. She never did that for me, not when we dated or after we got married. And she was wearing the same nightdress she wore with me on Sunday. Sam stopped the video and waited for me to come back before playing it again. She tried to kiss him, but he pointed down and she went back to him until he was ready again. Then she got on top and they went at it. After a while, she lay back and he took over in the classic way. Sam turned the sound on and we heard them breathing hard. Jan said, almost panting, "I'm so happy we do this once a year, Randy. I'd go crazy if I couldn't let loose like this at least once. I love my husband, but he wouldn't look at me the same if I did this with him." "I get it, Jan," Randy breathed out. Sam said, "I thought you needed to hear that," and turned the sound off. We watched them go at it a few more times before Sam put in another tape of Carla and her boyfriend doing almost the same thing. After it ended, Sam shut off the TV and looked at us. "So, what do you guys want to do? Divorce?" "Sam, we've talked about this. Get the divorce papers ready, but wait on delivering them until we say so. And we need the full names and places of Randy and Mark. We plan to send their wives the report and the video." "All right, I'll get started on that today. The investigator has all the names and addresses in his report." We made a stop at Sam's office first, promising to hand over copies and a video for us to keep. Then, the talk turned to my child's real dad. We grabbed the DNA results on our way here. Got an extra one for you. Turns out Sean isn't my boy, sadly. But I'm hoping to legally make him mine. For that, you'd need the real dad's okay. Yeah, I know. But maybe we can push him into giving up his rights to Sean. Thought about taking my wife's lover to court for child support for the past 3 years. If he lets me adopt Sean, he'd be off the hook for money in the future. That might just work. And suing them for breaking up your marriage could be another way to press them. I'd like to move forward with those plans. "Have you told your wives about all this yet?" Sam probed. "Nope. Planning to break the news at dinner tonight." "Okay, here are your documents and the video. I'll start on this as you asked. Really sorry you're going through this." After leaving Sam, we hit an audio-video shop to make more copies of that video. I also bought a bug to plant later. Next was a quick trip to Kinko's to copy the DNA report. We stuffed those into big envelopes, addressed them to Randy and Mark's wives, and sent them off to land on their doorsteps in Milwaukee the next day. A short note was thrown in, offering ways to reach us or Sam. Back at my work, I told my boss I needed a few days off, starting tomorrow. My tasks were all done and my team knew how to find me, so he was cool with it. Amidst the whirlwind of sorting papers and planning, emotions were high, a mix of dread for what was coming, yet a hopeful glimpse at a future where I could officially call Sean my son. But first, there was the tough conversation at dinner, laying bare the truths and unexpected twists our lives had taken. It was a pivotal moment, not just a confrontation, but the beginning of setting right what had gone wrong, despite the heartache it brought to the surface. As the day dragged on at work, I dove into putting my life in order. I cut ties with our shared credit cards and got one just for me. I also shut down Jan's phone line. I peeked into Jan's email on her AOL account from my desk and saw she had messaged Randy on Monday, telling him she got home okay and couldn't wait for next year. Randy hadn't written back. I spent hours at my computer, adding bits of the video and photos from the report into a new website. I was careful to include all the dates and times and even added the DNA test results for me and the kids. But I kept these files hidden, locked away safely before heading home. Bob, Carla, and Melissa were already at my house when I arrived, drinks in hand. Bob and I slipped away to the family room while the wives started dinner. "Got everything set up?" Bob asked. "Just gotta put the video in. Give me a sec." I went, grabbed the video from my bag, and loaded it into the DVD player. Back on the couch, I cheered to Bob and he echoed the gesture. Dinner passed with easy chatter, and soon we ushered the kids to another room with SpongeBob on the screen, their favorite. Then in the family room, with a serious air, I told everyone there was a video we needed to see. Jan and the others gave me wary looks. "This isn't some raunchy stuff, right?" Jan challenged. "You promised no X-rated junk here." "No, love, it's about family, how easily one can break," I assured her, though tension brewed under my skin. Skepticism painted her face, but she nodded. I pressed play. The image of a bed and then a naked Randy climbing onto it emerged. Jan didn't catch on at first until she burst out, "You swore this wasn't X-rated." "It's a lesson," I argued with a heavy heart, hoping to convey the deep betrayal without having to spell it out starkly. Then Jan appeared on the screen. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" she yelled. Her face turned pale as she watched herself with Randy crying out in shock. Jan and Carla were both crying hard. "Turn it off, please!" Carla begged. "Don't worry, Carla, you're in trouble too," Bob shouted at his wife. "We've got one of you as well." Shocked and crying, they didn't know what to do. When the kids ran in, we hurried them out before they saw too much. At last, Jan, between sobs, pleaded, "Please, Jim, turn it off. We need to talk." I turned it off, leaving them in tears. Why did you do this to us? We trusted you, and now that's gone. How can you fix this? You broke your promises. No sorry or I can explain will ease our pain. We need to know if you even care about saving what we had or we're done. We have enough to take everything. So tell us, if you think it's worth it, how will you make us trust you again? I don't know, I really don't, Jan cried out, looking desperate. It was just for fun. I thought it wouldn't hurt anyone. Fun? Is hurting me and our family your idea of fun? I asked, feeling betrayed. You knew, Jan yelled, breaking down again. Meanwhile, Carla, still in tears, looked at her sister with sorrow. This moment changed everything. Their actions, meant to be hidden, now threatened to undo the very fabric of their families. The hurt and betrayal were palpable, demanding answers and solutions that seemed nearly impossible to find. The future of these relationships hung in a delicate balance, with tough decisions and hard truths yet to be faced. Bob, maybe you should take Carla and Melissa back home. Sort things out there. Jan and I have bigger issues to deal with than you do right now. Jan was curled up on the couch, crying hard as I walked Bob and his family out. Carla turned away from me, her face wet from tears, her makeup smeared. I didn't say anything to her, just hugged Bob like a brother when they left. When I got back, I sent the kids to their room. They were starting to worry something bad was happening in our family. I decided they should stay with my parents overnight. They were happy to hear this. A night at their grandparents' meant being spoiled, a real treat for them. After sending the kids off, I went to Jan. I'm dropping the kids at my folks, back in 30. You've got that time to think. Think about how you're going to make up for cheating, or if you think our marriage and being with the kids is worth fighting for. The only reason I'm even thinking of letting you stay is for the kids. I won't lose Sean. He's my son too. They need a mom, and you're still the best choice for that. If you want a divorce, I'll tell everyone about the video, the DNA test, and what the investigator found. Your life here will be over. Think hard. She just kept crying, louder now. I packed up the kids with their night stuff and headed to my parents, about a 15-minute drive. They were surprised but understood when I said Jan and I needed some space. Dad gave me a knowing look. Take your time, son. You don't look too good. I'll manage, Dad. Imagine a night heavy with heartache, where words spoken cut deep, but the hope for a family kept whole whispers in the midst of turmoil. In the quiet drive to the safety of my childhood home, I pondered the tangle of love, duty, and betrayal. My parents' welcome offered a brief respite from the storm. Yet as I left my children in their care, embracing their innocent excitement, a part of me envied their oblivious joy. Turning my car back into the night, the road seemed longer, each turn a crossroad of what was and what might be. Amid the looming silence, the weight of decisions yet unmade pressed down, a somber prelude to a conversation that would chart the course of our lives. I got back home and the place was too quiet. Jan wasn't around in the living area, so I headed to our room. There I saw her packing up her stuff, moving it to the spare room. I just stared and said, "Well?" She looked terrible and kept crying as she tried to speak. "This marriage, you and the kids, mean everything to me. I won't say I'm sorry for what I did, nor will I try to make sense of it because you didn't want me to. Why I let myself get pregnant by him, I can't even explain to myself. If you allow me, I'll stay. I know I need to leave our marriage bed until you're ready to have me back. You can still be with me whenever you want. I know you might want revenge by being with someone else, and I can't stop you. It would hurt me as much as I've hurt you. I'll do anything, agree to whatever you ask, just to stay here with you and our kids. I know if we divorced, it would destroy me. Thank you for even thinking of giving me a chance to make things right." That was a lot to say, Jan. You might not yet understand what I'll need from you to stay, and you might decide to leave. But I've wanted revenge so badly. Since finding out 10 days ago, I've been in hell, but your hell may last years. Think about that. I have, Jim. I'll tell you my conditions tomorrow, I said, and then went back downstairs. Later, lying in bed alone, I could hear her crying in the spare room. I wanted to go to her, to comfort her, but the thought of what she did made me too angry. I couldn't do it. She had to go through her own process of making things right. The next morning, I woke up early, took a shower, and dressed in casual clothes. It was a sunny Saturday, and the house was buzzing with the thought of family coming over. But my mind was elsewhere, challenged by the task of penning down the new rules of our changed marriage. I wanted to lay it all out clearly before Jan woke up. So I sat in the kitchen and wrestled with each word for nearly an hour, until I had it all down just right. When the clock struck 10, I went to wake Jan. "After you're ready," I said, "please join me in the kitchen." She gave a sleepy nod, and not long after I heard the shower. Half an hour later, she was with me, sitting at the kitchen table, ready to listen. "I want to be clear," I started. "I've thought this through, trying not to let my anger drive me. I'm not sure if I still love you, but I'm willing to see if we can get past this. I miss the woman you used to be." Jan looked at me, a soft smile and a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Oh, Jim, I want to be that woman again, to leave our troubles behind us, but I know I have a lot to make right." "Yes, you do. And here's what it's going to take," I said. Then I started on my list. 1. You can't talk to any man alone, not even the guy bringing pizza or checking the meter. 2. No more going places by yourself. Doesn't matter what's happening, if I can't go with you or send someone I trust, you can't go. 3. You must tell me every time you leave the house, where you're going, how long it'll take, why you're going, and let me know when you're back. 4. You can't have credit cards or a phone. I've already taken care of those. 5. You must always be ready for CC whenever I ask, no holding back. If I want you, you agree, no questions asked. I read through each condition with a heavy heart, hopeful yet filled with a mix of emotions hard to untangle. If you could do it for Randy, surely you can for me too, right? Yes, I get it. I always wanted the same for us, but feared I'd lose your high view of me. Now, any respect I might have had for you is gone. Was it worth your while? No, absolutely not, she cried out. What happened between us means I have to set these rules too. 6. You'll show me respect at every turn. Be a joyful and willing wife and mom. 7. You'll tell me every time you talk or message a man. This includes phone calls, online chats, or emails. I'll know if you're lying, so be honest. 8. You'll sign papers letting me adopt Sean. 9. Keep chats with Carla, whether in person or not, to an hour a week max. I'm not sure who led who astray in your affair, but I'm putting my money on you. Bob agrees we've got to keep you two apart. 10. You'll get money for clothes, but I need to okay any new buys. I'm not funding your flings with fancy threads. That's another thing that gets under my skin, but that's about it. Any problems or second thoughts on these terms? If you break any, the punishment will fit the crime. None. I agree wholeheartedly. If our roles were swapped, I'd be even stricter. Thank you. We must remember Sean's real dad has to agree too. I'm on it, and we've started on getting his okay. Just so you know, your affair buddy and Carla's aren't getting off easy. We've sent their spouses the proof we found, including a video. Plus, we're suing them for breaking up our marriage, and your pal will be hit with claims for past and future child support unless he gives the nod for adoption. I bet he'll sign and steer clear of Sean till he's 21. The given text is rewritten to comply with the rules of using short and low syllables, common words, varied sentence lengths, and extending the duration a bit, all while keeping it knowledgeable yet simple, emotionally strong, and maintaining a story-like tone. That'll ruin him. You should have seen the future mess when you mixed up with him and had his kid. Her eyes shut. It felt so easy, we never thought we'd get caught. But you got caught. I had a rough night, full of dreams about Jan and Randy laughing at me while they were together. I woke up angry, drenched in sweat. I must have made some sound because Jan rushed in asking, "Are you okay?" Still caught in my anger, I snapped, "I'm fine, just leave." "I'm sorry," she said, retreating from the room. The next morning, I got up, took a shower, and got dressed for early church. I knocked on Jan's door, saying, "We're leaving for church in an hour," then started getting the kids ready. We left on time, sticking to our usual routine. After church, we hit IHOP for breakfast, then headed home for a relaxed afternoon. I watched football, Jan did her crossword, and the kids played. The odd part was me sneaking out to the garage at halftime to set up a wiretap. From now on, I'd be able to listen in on Jan when I wasn't home. Another unusual thing was a call I got that afternoon from Randy's wife. "Jim, thanks for the package. It opened my eyes wide, and I'm going to use it in my divorce. Is a yearly affair enough for that? I questioned. It's been more than yearly. He's been wandering for ages. Now I have what I need to leave him and make him pay. Thanks. Can you help me with something? I asked. Of course, what do you need? I need a sample from your husband for a DNA test. I've got a fatherhood puzzle here. Whatever you send needs to be confirmed as from your husband. You got it. Give me a couple of days. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Did you know that Mark, my husband's pal, is also facing a divorce? He cheated just like my husband. No, I didn't know that. Thanks for letting me know. Then we hung up. I went to find Jan and saw her in the living room with the kids. She gave me a puzzled look. She knew better than to ask who was on the phone, but I told her anyway, wanting her to feel the sting of her actions. That was Randy's wife. She's leaving him. Mark's wife is leaving him too. She looked shocked and lowered her head. It turns out, I went on, they were both cheating, and the proof I sent helped their wives decide to leave them. This is going to cost them a lot. They'll spend their lives working to pay for their mistakes and their lawyers. And with my lawsuit against him, Randy is really in trouble. Jan suddenly got up and ran out crying. Later, she came back and said, I'm sorry for running off. It hit me how much I had to do with breaking up 2, maybe 3 marriages. It wasn't because I still care for him. I just stared at her. I felt nothing more needed to be said. Ha! And so we started a time of making things right. To keep a closer eye on Jan, I bought an audio recorder that could pick up voices from tiny bugs hidden around the house. I placed the recorder in the garage next to another tracking device and spread 3 bugs in places where guests might talk. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to keep tabs on her. Day by day, it was clear that the weight of following my rules was wearing her down. She looked more tired and worn out as time passed. It was tough on me, too. Both my boss and my secretary felt I should see a doctor. They worried the flu I had was not leaving, and perhaps it was now walking pneumonia. But I knew it was not my body that was sick, but my mind. Our love life had turned cold, only about sex, no warmth. She endured my harsh desires, never saying a word. Each night I checked my recording devices, seeing if she spoke to anyone she shouldn't. She followed my strict rules, always calling me when leaving the house. But I started to see how these heavy chains I put on her were hurting us both. Our marriage had become a cold place, and I realized we needed to change. A new path after a month of tension, it was clear our home was falling apart. Even our kids felt it, staying quiet and worried. They sensed a storm brewing, and their fear hurt me deeply. My need for control was breaking the very family I wanted to keep safe. One Sunday, with the kids playing outside, I knew it was time to talk. I led Jan to the family room. We need to talk, I said softly. Her look was scared as I sat her next to me. Holding her face gently, I kissed her, whispering, I love you. She stared, lost for a moment. Then tears came. I held her, letting her cry. We had all the time in the world. This was about fixing our future. If we couldn't make it here, we weren't going to make it anywhere. At last, her tears stopped, and she leaned back to look at me. Is this really you? Do you truly love me? She asked. I can't deal if you're lying. I do love you, Jan. I can't keep living like this, watching you fade away every day. It's hurting the kids, too. I spent days thinking hard about how I feel for you. I've been feeling so hollow, thinking maybe I don't love you anymore. I wanted to push through for the kids, but a breakup seemed near if I couldn't get past your affair and the fact Sean isn't mine. But I want you to know, I might not forget, but I am willing to forgive. When I decided to forgive, I suddenly felt better. It's 'cause I love you. I hope that makes sense. Jim, I never thought I'd hear you say that. I get where you're coming from, and know it wasn't easy for you. You won't regret this. I love you so much. I've missed you so many nights. Tonight, after the kids are asleep, let's make slow, loving love all night, I said. Her face lit up with a joy I hadn't seen in ages. Then she pulled my face close and kissed me. Her kiss turned deep and full of want. Wow, I said. I can't wait. Just then the kids came in and we had to stop our hug. Looking into each other's eyes, We found love and promises. Seeing the kids, we smiled at each other and they started hugging and laughing with us. We knew we had a lot to work through, but in that moment, with our family wrapped in joy, it felt like we could face it all, together. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but it felt like step one to mending our hearts and home. We became a family once more. In the weeks that came after that day, our nights were full of love. We gave our all, diving into our deepest desires. I found Yan couldn't get enough, and I was just as keen to meet her every want. Our joy as a family grew just as much as our love did. The rules I had set were soon left behind. My trust and love for her came back, but sometimes, deep in the night, I'd wake up in a cold sweat, haunted by those dark days. Jan knew what stirred my fears and would wrap me in her arms, kissing away the bad thoughts until sleep took me again. Whenever she went out alone, she made sure I knew her every move. She knew my heart couldn't handle any doubt of her being true. I finally sorted out the child support mess with Randy, turning that money into a college fund for our boys. He gladly signed the papers to let go of any more duties. We took care of the lawsuits and got enough to pay off Sam and the detective. Bob and Carla stayed together, and in time, we found our old bond again. We have shared many joyful times since. Our wives never talked of going on trips alone again. Our peace of mind is kept in safe deposit boxes with only Bob and me holding the keys. Copies of the video and the report rest there, hidden, ready if needed. I still have that website up on my work PC, just a click away from sharing it. Our wives never talk about the proof of their mistake, but I guess they sense it's still there. The weeks after we patched things up, life started feeling normal again. Yet I couldn't shake off the deep hurt from her affair and the fact she got pregnant by another man during her yearly getaway. I thought maybe a talk with a shrink could shed some light on why she did it. She said yes to the idea, but never followed through. The topic just faded away, but not for me. I kept turning it over in my mind. This act of hers seemed like a deep flaw, one that could pop up again. Her avoiding help made me think she knew it too, and didn't want anyone to shine a light on it. That scared me. She might do something similar down the line, but be sneakier. I had to do something, anything, to prevent another heartbreak, especially while our kids were still young. They adored Jan. She was a great mom, and if push came to shove, she'd likely win in a battle for them. I needed a plan with layers. First, I talked to a lawyer. I wondered if something like a prenup could work after marrying. A contract spelling out what happens with our stuff if things went sideways. The lawyer suggested a custom agreement that could act like a safeguard for our assets, hitting Jan's wallet if she strayed again. In this complex dance of emotions and legal safeguards, the journey wasn't just about protecting assets, but also about guarding a family structure shaking on its foundations. The steps taken, wrapped in legal counsel and emotional turmoil, reflected a desperate bid for stability amid the storm of betrayal and hurt. The path forward, lined with legal documents and silent battles, was about crafting a future where trust, once shattered, could perhaps, against odds, be pieced back together. Second, I thought about keeping a closer eye on her through tech, but at home she seemed too calm to stir trouble soon. It might take years for her to slip again. Besides, checking her actions via bugs and taps would eat up hours every single day. No, I decided to wait and watch for any odd moves in her daily life before diving deep into spying again. I was sure she'd be extra careful next time, making it hard and pricey to catch her in the act. Still, I started saving money on the side for advanced spying and hiring detectives without her knowing, if need be. She usually didn't meddle in our money matters, but I always kept her in the loop just in case something happened to me, so I planned to keep things normal but keep the special fund a secret. Third, I pushed for us to see a marriage counselor to boost our relationship skills. It was vital for me to show that I tried everything to save our marriage. Fourth, I dove deeper into being there for our kids. Someday, I might have to prove to a judge that I was just as involved in their upbringing as Jan was. Right now, she had the upper hand as she stayed at home with them. But when our kids began school, I planned to nudge her back to work. With a degree in library science, she should easily land a job that starts part-time and could grow to full-time once the kids were older. Plus, I figured a library might limit her chances of meeting other men. Throughout this plan, my feelings swirled, a mix of hope, fear, and determination. I was setting a path that involved surveillance, secret savings, counseling, and a deeper bond with my children. Each step was chosen not just to guard against future heartbreak, but to possibly mend what was broken. The journey was laced with complexity, testing my resilience and love for my family. As I navigated this delicate balance, the overarching goal remained clear: to rebuild trust and ensure a future where love and honesty could thrive once more. In the end, I made up my mind that taking short, unexpected trips on weekends might just help us find each other again. It was my plan to breathe life back into our marriage, to hold our family close. I was ready to put in all the effort needed, yet I also knew I had to prepare for the worst. Plus, the promise of USA Week. After I went to see the lawyer about the marriage promise, he rang me up. He told me he was done with the draft and wished for me to look it over. I managed to sneak a few hours away from work and headed to his office. The document was pretty much what I had in mind, covering all the points I cared about. In its core, it was a pact to stay true to each other. No stepping out, or the one who did would have to walk away with nothing from what we had built together. This deal would stand until our youngest child turned 21. After that, any split would mean splitting everything in half. But if cheating broke us apart before then, the parent with the kids would get support from the other till the kids hit 21. Cheating meant sleeping with someone else, plain and simple. Kissing wasn't part of this. I took a copy of this promise home, and come evening, I sat with Jan to share why this mattered to me. She was taken aback, but hearing how it could help mend my trust, she hesitantly nodded. She was in a tight spot. Saying no could mean she wasn't on board with us truly fixing things. It might even seem like she had plans to stray again. We decided to meet at our lawyer's place the next day to make it all official. After putting our names on that paper the next morning, I took Jan out for coffee. It was a small step, but it felt like we were starting to find our way back to each other. As we sat quietly across from each other, her silence spoke volumes. "Everything okay?" I gently inquired. I've been lost in thought about how we could have dodged this mess if I hadn't lost my way. I don't know what got into me. It's like I snapped and got caught up in all the secrets and desire. Let's just make sure we're both extra mindful from now on. Our marriage can't take another hit. I knew I was just as vulnerable as Jan was in this pact. It meant I had to steer clear of any situation that might risk our relationship for the next 18 years. That night was different. We connected deeply. It was a sign that we were turning a new leaf in our marriage. As time marches on, as time moved on, normalcy returned to our family life. Jan and I found our spark again, making time for romance amidst the chaos of parenting. Our folks were glad to watch the kids, giving us precious weekends alone. A year of marriage counseling worked wonders. We cleared the air and learned how to be better partners. I got more involved with the kids, taking on story time, sports, and backing Jan up whenever she needed. Every now and then, I'd check in on Jan's communications and spending, making sure there were no red flags. It was smooth sailing. Once Sean began school, Jan found a part-time job at the library. It was the perfect setup, allowing her to be there for the kids after school. This went on happily until the kids hit high school, and she stepped up to a full-time gig at the library. During this period, my career was blooming, and together we were saving a decent amount of money for our children's college funds. Our kids were doing really well in school, too, so we had hopes they might get scholarships. I started to discuss with Jan the idea of us going on a cruise for our next wedding anniversary. Jan was excited about the idea, and we started making plans. Around this time, Jan mentioned that her library wanted her to attend a seminar in Chicago about computer systems used in libraries. She said to me, "Jim, I really need to go. It's important for my career, especially if I want to take over Sue's position when she retires next year." Sue was the boss at the library. Why not? When does it happen? This was a big moment. It had been 12 years since her affair, and I hadn't doubted her since. "It starts 3 weeks from now on a Tuesday and ends on Friday. Okay, how about I come over on Friday and we spend the weekend in Chicago?" "Oh, darling, that would be amazing. Thank you for trusting me to go." You've shown me I can trust you over these last 12 years, Jan. I love you more now than I did when we first married." Her face glowed, and she leaned in for a deep kiss. "Oh, my love, I feel the same about you." That night was filled with passion, but deep down, I felt the need to be completely sure. My secret savings had grown to over $50,000, and I decided a little peace of mind was worth the expense. So I reached out to the investigator in Chicago who had helped me before, asking him to quietly watch her during the seminar. The investigator found nothing suspicious about Jan's time at the seminar, and we enjoyed a lovely weekend together in Chicago afterward. A year later, with Sue retired, Jan was promoted to head librarian. I felt proud of her, but her new job meant she had to travel and attend city meetings. I was worried. If she was going to step out, now was the chance. I started checking our home tap and her phone more, but found nothing. A year into her job, things felt off between us. She was in the city more, and something seemed strange. When you live with someone for nearly 20 years, you get good at sensing when they're upset or hiding something. Suddenly, it felt like she was. Our intimate life was still strong, but she seemed more into one specific act. We often used whipping cream in bed, a habit that grew after her city trips. I went along thinking it spiced things up, but it still made me suspicious. I had been ready for years not to be caught off guard again, so I decided to act on my doubts. Maybe she was planning a surprise for my upcoming birthday, but I had to know for sure. To keep tabs on her, I knew I'd need to dip into our savings. If she was having an affair, she would be very careful, having a lot to lose. I reached out to a private investigator recommended by a colleague in Chicago. He amazed me with how much spying tech had evolved. Tiny devices with incredible reach and clarity, unlike anything from 12 years ago. He laid out what was needed to install a high-end spy setup. He had to get into her world secretly, which meant finding a way into her car, purse, library office, and her briefcase without her knowing. Swapping our cars was easy. I told Jan it needed oil, and I'd handle it since the shop was near where I work. We had swapped cars like this before, so she didn't think it was odd. In her car, he put in tiny cameras and mics, along with a tracker to follow where the car went using GPS. Her purse was trickier, but one sunny day while she lay by the pool catching sun, the detective sneaked in and hid a little listening device in her wallet. That way, no matter which purse she used, her wallet, and the bug, would always be with her. He did the same with her briefcase in my workshop, where he had all his special tools. He made sure the audio was clear enough to catch sounds from as far as a quarter-mile away before he left. He set each bug on its frequency, so if one got jammed, the others would still work. He also tapped her phone lines and placed tiny cams in the bedrooms and family room. Pretending to be an insurance guy, he managed to plant bugs and cameras in her office at the library while she was out at a meeting. After that, all I could do was act normal and wait. Plus 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 plus. Truth revealed a week into spying on Jan. The detective found out she was seeing a guy from the main city library. I wasn't shocked or upset like the first time I found out she was cheating. He said she met him twice that week at the downtown library, and both times they went to a hotel nearby for a bit. He even got audio from the bug in her purse. As the days went by and more details came in, the weight of the betrayal sank deep. I had always believed love and trust were unbreakable between us, but hearing her with someone else shattered that belief into a million pieces. What hurt the most wasn't just the infidelity, but the ease with which she wove these lies into our daily lives, leaving me to question what was real and what was just a facade. I had to make a choice about what came next. The path was unclear, and the thought of confronting her or unraveling years of our life together was daunting. But the truth, as harsh as it was, brought with it a clarity. No longer could I live in the shadow of doubt, and whatever lay ahead, it had to be a step towards honesty and healing. The journey wouldn't be easy, but hidden behind the curtain of deception, I hoped, was a future where trust could be rebuilt on stronger, more genuine foundations. He never had a camera or mic in the room during their first meeting, but by their second, he made sure they were led to a room he had rigged after tipping the hotel clerk. He asked me to keep sending him the video copies and to keep an eye on them. I needed solid proof that this wasn't just a fleeting affair. When the DVD from the investigator arrived, I secluded myself in my study, popped it into my laptop, and watched as she was intimate with another man, yet again. The week after, they switched their meeting spot, but the investigator kept track of everything, even managing to capture their voices this time. I gave it a couple more weeks, but my desire for her had vanished. I excused myself from our bed, claiming I was feeling under the weather. She seemed taken aback, and I sensed she realized things were taking a wrong turn. The investigator also snagged a conversation between Jan and her sister Carla that caught my attention. Carla asked, "How's your love life?" Jan beamed. "It's amazing. The thrill of being with two is something else." Carla warned, "You're playing with fire. Jim would lose it if he knew the truth." Jan brushed it off. "No way he'll catch on. The thought of him finding out is what he'd really hate." Carla pressed, "You need to think this through. You've got a good life, family, job. All that's at risk." Jan laughed it off. "You're too cautious. I've got this under control." "What about your kids?" Carla worried. "They're fine," Jan shrugged. The simplicity of their conversation in the face of betrayal stirred a mix of emotions in me. The stark reality of deceit, trust shattered, not by just actions but through casual, heartless banter, painted a clear picture of the crumbling facade of my marriage. The revelation, though painful, was necessary, peeling back the layers of lies to reveal the bitter truth underneath. It was a story not just of infidelity but of denial, of the eroding bonds that once held a family together, now threatened by the very acts deemed thrilling in the moment. They helped me keep Jim right. If he cheats, I get his money and the kids, but they do mess with my life. Carla, "I think you're nuts, Jan. I gotta go. Talk later." Jan, "Bye." We kept living together, but she started to feel like something was about to go down. She stopped her downtown trips and became quiet, avoiding eye contact. We had a family BBQ planned for the weekend with both our families. I thought it was time to let everyone know. I was after revenge. I was busy all week getting ready for the weekend. Jan just became more and more down. I didn't feel sorry for her. After a chat with Sam, he refreshed and filed the divorce papers again. I got copies to give Jan at the BBQ. Sorting out our bank accounts, cards, insurance, and other stuff was a breeze since I'd done it before. I also refreshed the hidden website on my work computer and posted it. Come Saturday, Jan stayed in bed till noon while I prepped for the party. While Jan slept, I snuck over to our church and pinned the website on the notice board titled, "Jan Morris's Bad Choice." Around 1, family began to show up, but Jan didn't come downstairs. She knew what was coming. Carla tried to talk to her and came down looking pale and shocked. She came over and said, "Jim, you're not really going to do what I think you are you?" "Absolutely," I said. "You said it, Carla. She's done for." I then yelled to everyone, "Can all the grown-ups come to the living room? I've got something to show." "Please, Jim, don't. It'll destroy her." She was told again and again if she did it one more time, her life as she knew it would end. Now it has. I spoke these words as I guided her family inside, where I shared the gist of what Jan had done, showing them bits of videos and letting them hear the audio recordings. The family gathering fell apart quickly after my reveal. Carla didn't watch. She went to comfort her sister. Her parents were hit hard by the news. Her mom needed support to reach the car. Her dad was pale and shaken. My own parents shed tears, and my brothers and their wives were stunned. After everyone else had left except for Bob and Carla, I asked them to join me in seeing Jan again. She was still on the bed, tears streaming down her face. "Jan?" My voice was gentle. "Could you sit up, please? Bob and Carla are here too." She might have thought my gentle tone meant I was ready to forgive, to take her back, as she began to smile. But that smile vanished as I handed her the divorce papers with a scornful smirk. "Here's your new start, you traitor. Think of this as freedom from our marriage and your role as a mother. You've got 1 hour to pack your essentials and leave. We'll only speak through lawyers now." "Oh, Jim," Carla burst out. "Isn't this enough for one day?" Maybe you're right, Carla. I'll wait till Monday to inform the library board about what their 2 workers have been up to. I bet they'll have a lot to say. And yes, I'm planning to sue her lover too. Jan's cries filled the room as she buried her face in her hands, still holding on to the divorce papers. I'm so sorry, truly sorry. You've got 55 minutes left, Jan. Best start packing. Whatever you can't take now can be sorted later when we divide everything up. I turned and left, Bob trailing behind me. Jim was really upset. Jan has done too much that hurt me, he said as we sat in the kitchen. She likes to see me hurt. How bad is it when my wife wants a baby by another guy, or makes me do things that make me feel so small? No, I don't think I'm too tough on her. She didn't care about how I felt, so now she gets to feel what I felt. I'll be better off without her. I've lost too much time on her already. All right, you do have a point there. I'll be hearing about this from Carla for a long time, I responded. Sorry you have to deal with that. You're lucky, though. Carla moved past her mistake. Yeah, things have been good since then. What about your sons, Ryan and Sean? This will hit them hard. Thought about talking to them? They're upstairs. I'll chat with them once Jan's gone. Best of luck, Jim. Carla's going to make sure I can't see you again, so I wish you the best. We shook hands just as Carla and Jan walked down the stairs and out the door. Jan couldn't even look up, still in tears. Carla, before leaving, said, Bob, please grab the bags from upstairs. Bob and I went to get the bags. After they left, I had to do the toughest thing ever. I had to explain to my sons about their mom and our broken marriage. I hoped they would understand and forgive. Story 2. She made a big mistake in our city. There's a small hill right in the center. It was turned into a lovely city park, a spot where folks would cluster around its tiny pond during the hot days of summer, and where ski lovers could dive into their passion during winter without the need to fight the city's crazy traffic. But it was neither a sunny day in July, nor a bright, cold morning in January when I, Christian Harvey, aged 29, found myself sitting on a bench. I wasn't there for a walk or to lose myself in a book. I was simply staring at the fog-coated Montreal scene on a dreary November afternoon, pondering the sure end of my marriage. 4 weeks earlier, I was coming back from a draining 2-week trip to Europe, where I had finally secured the signature of one of my company's biggest clients on a contract that would keep half of our team busy for a bit over 18 months. I work in sales for a niche engineering company. I had spoken to my boss late the night before. Saying Mr. Roy was happy with the news hardly covers it. He couldn't wait to see me in his office the following Monday morning and promised a hefty bonus would soon make my bank account much happier. Since it was Friday, he suggested I take my wife to our top-choice restaurant to not hold back on the food and wine, and said he'd cover the bill. Right after hanging up with him, I dialed Sophie, my wife of 5 years, to share the great news and asked her to book the babysitter for our little 2.5-year-old angel, Melody. I reached her voicemail, leaving a message doing my best to keep my excitement in check. Truth be told, I was nearly giggling. Imagine that, a giggling guy, and an engineer no less. I couldn't wait to board the plane that morning. If I could have made the plane zoom off faster by pushing it, believe me, I would have. I missed my wife a ton. That night was going to be just right. Sure, it sounds pretty normal, but take it from me, being away for 2 whole weeks, and the week before being her off-limits time, it's no joke to say I was more than ready to see her. Hey, love, your newsman is here, all happy about getting the job done. That was me trying to sound cool as I walked in late in the day. Not too shabby for an engineer, huh? People think we're all about dry facts, no spice. Expected a cheerier welcome, especially after being apart for 2 weeks. But the house was silent. Too silent. Even Melody, our little one, wasn't buzzing around, way past her nap time. Sophie was at the kitchen table staring at a glass of that weird red drink. Odd, since she can't stand the stuff. It's usually just for Melody. Tears had clearly been flowing. Her eyes were as red as the drink. What's up, my love? I tried for a hug and a kiss, but she shied away, starting to cry again. Words weren't coming. She just shook her head and pointed to a chair. I tried to comfort her, but she wasn't having it. So there I was, sitting full of worry. Eventually, her crying slowed. She took my hand, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "This morning I woke up in another man's bed. Whoa, hold up. That hit like a truck. Let me back up a bit. If I could have sprinted alongside that plane to speed it up, you bet I would have. I was aching to see my wife. The evening we had planned felt like it was going to be something out of a dream. I mean, 2 weeks is a long time, and given the week before was a no-go for us, you could say I was more than eager. Entering our home, I shouted, "Guess who's finally back, ready to share some great news?" Engineers like me aren't exactly poets, but hey, I tried. Sophie's voice came weak from the kitchen, which was off. She's usually the life of the party, bouncing off the walls with energy. After 2 weeks apart, I expected more. Everything felt too quiet, too still. Even Melody was strangely silent, napping when she shouldn't be. There was Sophie, a glass of red next to her, a drink she usually hates, eyes swollen from crying. "Hey, what happened?" I moved to comfort her, but she pulled back, tears rolling down again. No words, just a gesture to sit. I tried to reach out, but she wasn't up for it. Confused and anxious, I simply sat, not knowing what to do. Her tears finally began to slow. Clasping my hand, those tearful eyes met mine, and she dropped the bombshell. Today, I woke up in a bed that wasn't ours. Wait, what did she just say? I was with another man last night. Yes, we slept together, she managed to say, tears rolling down her face. I just sat there, stunned, trying to wrap my head around the bombshell my wife, Sophie, had dropped. She buried her face in her hands, crying. "I'm so sorry, Chris. It wasn't supposed to happen. I can't explain it. Maybe I drank too much. I lost control." "Who?" My voice had an edge. "His name's Daniel Levesque, a friend of Chantal's from work. We get together on Thursdays when we don't work the next day. He was new, met us last night. He flirted, and I, too drunk, went along. I barely remember going to his place, but waking up next to him, it felt so wrong, yet in the moment it didn't. Her tears wouldn't stop. Listening, I felt my anger boil. My work, my bonus, all forgotten. It's shocking how quickly joy can turn to ash. I got up, needing to escape. "I need air," I declared. "No, stay," she begged. "Excuse me? After what you've done, you think you can tell me what to do?" "I should leave," she said quietly. "My dad's coming. I told him. He'll be here soon. I'm going to stay with them for the weekend. I'll be back Sunday." "So will you be at your parents' or with him?" I snapped, feeling sick. Starting afresh, away from her bombshell, felt both necessary and heartbreaking. As I wrestled with feelings of betrayal and shock, the simple act of walking outside became a quest for clarity in a suddenly complex world. The ease of our daily life, now shattered, haunted each step. Her confession, unexpected and raw, tore through the fabric of our marriage. The name, Daniel Levesque, now a permanent scar, spoke volumes of a night that changed everything. Their reckless abandon, spurred by drinks and fleeting desire, left us in ruins. The pain of her tears, the depth of her regret, none could mend what had been broken. The urge to escape, to breathe air untainted by the revelation, overwhelmed me. Yet her plea to stay, to not abandon her in this moment of utter despair, held a different weight. It was a cry for understanding, a hope for forgiveness. But questions lingered like specters in the room. Could a weekend away, a brief respite at her childhood home, offer her the absolution she sought? Or was it a mere pause before facing the consequences of a night that could not be undone? In a world where words like trust and loyalty held immense power, the path forward remained uncertain. The simplicity of love, once taken for granted, now required a strength I wasn't sure we possessed. The future, once bright, now flickered uncertainly, challenging us to find light in the darkness of betrayal. "Chris, I get why you're mad, seriously. If it was me in your spot, I'd feel the same. But trust me, I've got no plans to see him ever again. It was just a slip-up." "Where's Melody now?" "She's at my parents'. Dropped her there this arvo so we could talk alone. No kids around. She'll be back with me by Sunday." "Ah, so you've made up your mind to go and take our girl with you? Wow, that's bold. Didn't think you'd brush me off that easy," I said, my words dripping with irony. Sophie didn't flinch. "Chris, leaving you is the last thing I want, and I wouldn't do anything to keep Melody away from you ever." I noticed her dad's car pull up outside. "I love you, Chris. Way more than you realize. This mess up, I'm truly sorry. I'm heading to my folks' place with Melody because I know you. You'll need time, maybe to think, maybe to drown your sorrows, or to square things." Her voice broke. Tears started again. She grabbed her bag by the door, which I hadn't noticed when I first walked in, and quickly she was gone in her dad's car. Revenge, I muttered under my breath, as if that would fix anything. Great, so I hurt you back. Who wins then? As if I'd act that petty. Coat still on, I decided it was better to stay home with a beer than turn sour in some bar, risking too much after too many drinks. I nursed a single beer the whole night, skipping dinner. My mind was a fog, lost on what to do next, and so wiped out from traveling these past 2 weeks, I couldn't string together a solid thought. The silence of the house echoed my own confusion, amplifying the void Sophie's departure had left. In that quiet, my thoughts wandered, replaying our conversation, each word she had said. The weight of the situation settled in, making every minute stretch endlessly. I knew this wasn't just about tonight or the mistake. It was about trust broken, about a gap that had formed between us, seemingly insurmountable at that moment. As the night grew older and the beer can sat empty, a mix of emotions churned within me. Anger, sorrow, disbelief. How did we get here? Where did things go so wrong? These questions haunted the corners of my mind, demanding answers I didn't have. In the absence of sleep, my thoughts ventured towards Melody, our little girl caught in this sudden storm. The idea of her, innocent and unaware of the cracks forming in her family, brought a sharp pain, a guilt that perhaps amidst our own turmoil, we had overlooked the impact this could have on her. The clock ticked on, a reminder of time passing, of decisions that awaited, and of conversations that needed to be had. By the time morning light began to pry through the curtains, a resolve had begun to form within me. No matter the hurt and the confusion, finding a way forward, for Melody's sake, became a newfound priority. The path wouldn't be easy, fraught with hard truths and perhaps more pain, but the silence of the night had offered clarity. It was time to confront the chaos, to rebuild, or to let go, but most importantly, to ensure that the love for our daughter guided every step we took from here on out. Yes, I was mad, but deep down I felt as though I had seen it coming, as if it was just a matter of time. CEGEP was where Sophie Gilbert and I first met. It's this unique school stage in Quebec, right between high school and university. We were paired up for a philosophy project during our final semester there. Our first meeting to work on the project happened at the campus cafe on a Wednesday afternoon. We were supposed to tackle our assignment, but our talk quickly shifted from the task at hand to pretty much everything else under the sun. We barely touched the work we needed to do. Long story short, by the next weekend we were dating. Sophie ended up at Concordia University, studying math to become a teacher, while I went to the Polytechnique for biomedical engineering. Thanks to both schools being in the same city, we moved in together after dating for 2 years and got married the summer I finished my degree. 3 years later, Melody was born, and for the past 2 months, we'd been trying to give her a sibling for the Harvey Gilbert family name. And no, here in Quebec, women don't take their husbands' last names when they marry. Life was good. Really good. Sophie and I, we were more than just married. We were best friends. That was until a few hours ago. Jet lag finally won over, and I headed to bed just before 9 p.m. My mind was a mess, but I pushed the thoughts aside, knowing tomorrow was another day to deal with them. I woke up at 4:30 the next morning, my mind racing and sleep nowhere in sight. There was a text from Sophie on my phone. "I love you, Chris. I love you so much." She sent it after I'd gone to bed. I chose to leave it be for now. Sometimes staying quiet can save you from creating bigger problems than those that might come from speaking too soon. The tale of us, winding through years, highlighted by the highs of love and the lows of underlying tension, showcases a complex dance of emotions, decisions, and those moments that shape our lives. Our story, like many, filled with the simple yet profound intricacies of human relationships, spoke volumes of love, regret, and the often intricate paths we navigate within the bonds we build. After doing what I usually do each morning, I made coffee, grabbed a pencil and paper, and began jotting down whatever popped into my head about the whole mess. I've always found that writing down my random thoughts and looking over them the next day helps me think more clearly. Was I still in love with Sophie? That wasn't even something I needed to question. Of course, I still loved her. Love isn't something you can just turn on and off in a heartbeat. Could I forgive her? Was it better for me to stay or to go? Could I ever trust her again? If I stayed, how would I feel the next time I had to leave town for work? While I tossed these questions around in my head, one thought started to take over everything else. I've had chances in the past to grab a drink or dinner with a woman in a hotel bar or restaurant. I'm pretty sure some of those could have led to more, either in my hotel room or theirs, but I never let it happen. A lot of them were really good-looking, even stunning, but staying out of trouble was never that hard for me. So why couldn't Sophie resist? Was this Daniel guy so much more appealing than me? Did she not love me as much as I loved her? Did she not think our marriage was worth staying faithful as much as I did? And why did she just shut me down yesterday? She cut me off and took off to her parents. Yeah, that's a great way to handle things. I just hope she doesn't teach that kind of attitude to her high school students. I made myself a proper breakfast. After nearly a week in France with just croissants and jam, eggs, and bacon felt more than right. And when it seemed late enough in the morning to not upset the neighbors, I started on the last lawn mowing of the season. The rest of my day went by with me doing chores and getting my laundry done. I grabbed some sushi on my way home and decided to eat early. Right as I sat down, another text from Sophie popped up. "You okay, Chris? I'm really sorry. Love you." I had cooled off a bit since her shocker yesterday. Maybe she was onto something. Perhaps I did need some time alone to sort my head out. I struggled to find the right words to reply, still not fully ready. "Love you too, Soph. Just can't wrap my head around this yet." She sent back a bunch of sad face emojis. "We'll talk more tomorrow. I miss Melody. Don't be late coming back." Once more, I hit the hay early, eager to see my girl Melody and to talk things over with Sophie. Sunday came and went without much fuss. Sophie's dad brought her and Melody back home right after they had dinner. I stepped outside to greet them. Holding Melody close, I listened to her chatter about her time at her grandparents'. Sophie's dad hugged me tight. "I hate seeing you all in such a tough spot, Chris. Go easy on Sophie. She's really beating herself up," Norman said. "To be honest, her mom and I haven't been very understanding either," he said, looking strained. "I've cooled down since yesterday, Norm. Won't raise my voice. Just need to understand and know what's next." He patted my back, kissed his daughter and granddaughter goodbye, and took off. After reading Melody her bedtime story and tucking her in, I found Sophie in the kitchen with her glass of wine. "Skipping the wine tonight?" I joked. "No. Felt like I'd never drink again after Friday. I'm good now, though. You want some?" I opted for a beer and joined her in the living room, ready for her to break the ice. "Chris, I love you and I'm so sorry." "Got it, Soph. Let's talk." We dived into a deep conversation trying to navigate the mess, each word slowly weaving a path towards healing. Life sure had thrown us a curveball, but in the healing light of honesty and love, we started to find our way back to each other. "You've said sorry 1,000 times, I get it. But why did this happen? Is it because what we have isn't enough? Do you love this other guy?" "No, not at all," she almost screamed. "Yes, he's easy on the eyes, he's a good talker, and he's fun. But it's you I love, Chris." "Then why?" She fiddled with her glass, lost in thought. "I don't know. The wine made my thoughts all fuzzy. I missed you a lot and I started feeling lonely." "That's no excuse, Soph. I was almost home." "You just had to wait a bit longer and I would have been here," I yelled, losing my cool. "I know it doesn't make sense. I can't stand how weak I was." Sophie's voice was barely a whisper. "Did you at least think to protect yourself?" Sophie looked at me, her eyes welling up, and then she broke down into tears. That told me everything. Sophie's cries were so loud they woke Melody up. I found an excuse to leave the heated kitchen and went upstairs to calm my little girl. When I came back down about 10 minutes later, Sophie had shifted from loud cries to quiet sobbing. "If you're pregnant with his child, it's done between us, Soph. I'm not going to take care of that guy's mistake," I said, harsher than I intended. Sophie looked utterly crushed. Part of me wanted to hold her, but I was too angry and almost found satisfaction in her pain. "And until we know for sure you're not expecting, I'm sleeping in the basement," I declared. Sophie didn't respond, drowning in her sob. It seemed like she couldn't handle any more hurt. I went upstairs, picked up some clothes and my toothbrush, and headed down to the basement. Passing her, still with her head down crying, didn't make it easier. The next morning, we barely spoke. Extended version. In those silent moments, the house seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with unsaid words and buried feelings. Our little world, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt cold and distant. The tension hung like a heavy fog, untouchable yet suffocating. Sophie's occasional sniffle broke the quiet, a stark reminder of the night before. Melody, our little girl, seemed to sense the shift. Her bright eyes clouded with confusion at the sight of her parents, so distant, so cold. It pained me to think of the impact our fracture might have on her, a seed of discord sown in her young heart. The day dragged on, each hour a series of avoided glances and half-hearted interactions. Sophie tried to reach out, her voice a mix of hope and fear, but the wall between us had grown too high. My heart ached with a mixture of anger and sorrow, a turbulent storm that refused to calm. As night fell, the house quieted down, but sleep eluded me. The basement, now my temporary refuge, felt more like a prison, holding me captive with my own turbulent thoughts and regrets. The bed felt foreign, the darkness too complete, and my mind raced with images of Sophie, her tears, and the chasm that now separated us. Questions swarmed, each one a pointed jab at my conscience. Could forgiveness find a place between us again? Was there a path that led back to each other, or had we wandered too far apart? The unknowns multiplied, leaving me restless and awake long into the night. The sound of Melody's gentle breathing from the baby monitor was the only comfort, a silver lining in the storm. It reminded me of what was at stake, of the tiny, beating heart that depended on us to find our way through the turmoil. In that dark, lonely space, I realized the depth of the work ahead. If there was any hope of mending the fissure, it would require more than words. It demanded action, understanding, and perhaps most challenging of all, the willingness to forgive the unforgivable. I had just dropped Melody off at daycare before heading to work, where Mr. Roy couldn't wait to hear about our negotiations in Europe and was all smiles, eager to find out if I had a good time celebrating with my wife. His joy vanished as soon as he saw the look on my face. "I got the bill from our fancy dinner on Friday," I told him, pretending to hand over an invisible piece of paper. "It cost us nothing thanks to a man named Daniel Levesque." Mr. Roy stared back, wide-eyed. I slumped into my chair, let out a deep sigh, and then spilled the beans about the mess my personal life had become. "What's your plan?" he asked after I finished. "For now, I'm sleeping in the basement until we find out if she's pregnant. If the baby's his, I'm going to see a divorce lawyer. If not, then a marriage counselor it is. Might need some time off soon." He assured me it wasn't a problem, thanked me for my work in Europe, and left, leaving me to my thoughts in the silence of my office, wondering how I'd make it through the day. The quiet at home that evening said it all. I arrived at 6 p.m. to find Melody already eating and Sophie finishing up our dinner. It was a silent, sad meal. That silence stretched into the days and weeks to come. Knowing Sophie's cycle like clockwork, I had a pretty clear idea about when her period was due. She became noticeably anxious as that day came and went with no sign. By that point, I was fairly certain of the outcome, so 3 weeks after that disastrous Friday, I made an appointment with a divorce lawyer. The decision weighed heavy on me, but in the swaying dances of life, sometimes the music stops and the lights turn on, revealing truths we wish stayed hidden in the dark. These moments, though, they forge us. They strip down the illusions and reveal the bare bones of what's left, our resilience, our capacity to endure, and the relentless pursuit of a sliver of happiness in the corners of our broken dreams. So I braced myself, facing the storm with a heart heavy with sorrow but steady in the resolve to find peace, come what may. The lawyer laid out the plan clear and simple. First, we file for a breakup, then we wait for the baby to come for a DNA test. If by some wild chance the baby was mine, which couldn't be, I could always go back, halting the split-up process. But if the baby wasn't mine, then I'm off the hook for any support, and could push for a divorce real quick, claiming she stepped out on our marriage. I nodded along, agreeing to his roadmap, and he said he'd have the paperwork ready in no time. Sophie, for her part, kept dragging her feet on that pregnancy test. But I kept my mouth shut, figuring she had her own mess to sort out. Come Wednesday, I walked into a scene, Sophie in tears. I stayed quiet, but her look told me she knew the jig was up. It might still be yours, you know? Her words got me laughing, a harsh, bitter laugh that even I found vile. Come on, Sophie. We haven't been together since that week before my Europe trip in September. Then you got your period and I was gone. There's no way that baby is mine. Maybe time to call up your one-night stand and share the good news. He's not my boyfriend, she yelled, then softer, almost broken. It was just once. I haven't seen him since. Well, your life, your choices, Sophie. I shot back, keeping it ice cold. Your love life ain't my problem anymore. I retreated to my room downstairs and shot my boss a text, saying I'd be out for the next couple of days. That night, I let the tequila numb the sting a bit. The next morning, I hit the ground running, checking out a couple of nearby apartments I'd spotted earlier in the week. By Friday, I'd signed the lease on one. It felt good, settling that fast. In the afternoon, I hopped on the subway, headed downtown to my lawyer's office to grab the separation papers, ready to close this chapter for good. It was a tough moment, filled with complex emotions, but moving forward seemed the only way out. As I stood on the precipice of this new chapter in my life, I couldn't help but reflect on the tangled web of decisions, emotions, and consequences that had led me here. When I stepped out of his office, it felt like I was being swept away by a huge wave, set to wreck everything I held dear, unstoppable. Caught up in my whirlwind of thoughts, I didn't notice I'd walked far beyond the suburb station, aimlessly drifting towards Mont-Royal, where this whole tale began. Eventually, I found my way back home, or to be precise, to the house, arriving around 8 p.m. I had paused for a quick meal, a burger and a beer at a pub nearby. I knew Sophie had been trying to reach out, likely worried sick, but I chose to ignore her texts. "Where have you been? Are you all right?" she asked, her concern evident in her eyes. "Here, take this. It's your copy of the separation papers," I said, handing her the envelope that said it all. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she sat down, not touching the envelope. "Everything's done by the book. It's a fair deal, covering everything about Melody. We both get to be with her, so no one has to pay child support. I'll give you some money for yourself, too. You can keep the house, and I'll help pay for it for another 5 years. That should give you plenty of time to save up and find a new place. As for the other baby, that's something you'll have to work out with the dad." "I can't help there," I said, my voice hard. "I've got an apartment not too far from here. I'll start moving stuff over on the weekend. I'll leave most of the furniture we got together, except for what's in the downstairs room where I've been sleeping these past few weeks. Everything I had before we got married, I'll take with me. My brother is coming by tomorrow with his truck to help me move. You might want to take Melody to see your parents or do some shopping. It'll be easier on all of us." Watching Sophie crumble was almost too much to bear. Part of me wanted to break down, too. Despite everything, my love for her lingered. I couldn't forgive her actions. And the thought of raising another man's child while still married? Unthinkable. I crept into Melody's room, lifted her gently as she slept, and kissed her forehead, whispering a promise to see her in a week. Tears fell. The thought of being away from my daughter every other week hurt deep. I laid her back down and headed to the basement to pack up my stuff. The next morning, around 8:30, I found a note from Sophie in the kitchen. She wrote that she and Melody were at her parents' house, that she loved me, and was torn apart by everything that had happened. I believed her pain was real, but I couldn't see any way to fix things. Hours later, we had separate addresses. Sophie met with my lawyer the following week and signed the divorce papers without a fight. And like that, our paths split for good. Jacob was born on July 1st, Canada Day. The lawyer requested a DNA test. No shock when it showed I wasn't the father. The divorce moved forward quickly, not needing to wait until November thanks to the proof of adultery. Looking back, waiting till November wouldn't have changed much. But accusing her of adultery felt like exposing her mistake to the world, bringing me a twisted kind of comfort. It hurt her more, causing her many tears. Was I being cruel? Maybe. Weeks later, dropping Melody off, Sophie admitted Jacob was Daniel Levesque's son, struggling with the words. Telling me seemed to cement her guilt, and her shame was visible. "I'm so sorry, Chris," she said, her voice filled with regret. This closure was elusive, a simple apology not mending the rift her actions caused. It was a complex tangle of emotions, where remorse met unyielded hurt, each of us navigating the remnants of a life we thought we'd share. I've said this too many times, but I can't find the right words to tell you how awful I feel about all this. This baby should have been yours. For some reason, learning that this Daniel was the real dad made me feel a bit better. At least, she hadn't been reckless, ending up with a child by someone she couldn't even recall. Yet, it was odd that I even cared about this. I half thought Daniel would move in with Sophie, that they'd start a life together. So I got a private detective to dig up everything on him. Not that I wanted to snoop or figure out what was really going on between him and my soon-to-be ex-wife, but I needed to be sure he was decent, that my little girl Melody would be safe around him. The PI found out he was 34, a bit older than Sophie and me. He edited books for kids in grade school. I felt a sting knowing he was single. There was a photo of him with a beard. Somehow, he looked known to me, like I'd seen him around before, but I couldn't place where or when. Was he around Sophie way before she let on, or much closer? This thought bothered me. Was I jealous? No, why would I be? After all, Sophie and I were nearly divorced. Yet, I pushed that thought away. The report mentioned he had a brother he didn't talk to much, up north in Kuujjuaq, Quebec. The detective watched him for 2 weeks. Daniel went to Sophie's every day but didn't live with her. He didn't even stay the night. Maybe they weren't together in that way after all. Time passed. Sophie took Melody and Jacob to her folks' home for Christmas Eve. On Christmas, I went over to Sophie's to pick up Melody, and for the first time, I ran into Daniel, who was getting Jacob ready to take him along. I was still really mad at him, and he could tell. Also, there was this odd sense of knowing him that I felt, and by the look on his face when I took off my frosted glasses, he felt it too. Yet I managed to give him a polite handshake and say hello, even though I really wanted to kick him hard. I never saw it before, but you two look so much alike. It's kind of strange, Sophie mentioned, just moments after Daniel and Jacob had left. Her words made me think. That might explain the strange feeling of knowing him. Could we be related? It seemed not. The DNA tests showed there was no link between me and Jacob, so being related to Daniel seemed out of the question, but we did look a lot alike. "Daddy!" Melody squealed with joy when she saw me, running down the stairs. "Hey, my little flower!" I greeted her, lifting her up. "Dad missed you a ton!" "Look, Dad, her name is Zaza," she beamed, showing me her new doll. "Daniel got it for me. That hit me like a punch." This man, who I saw as my foe, had bought my girl a sweet gift for Christmas. I felt small, unable to even be nice to his son. As Sophie and I got Melody ready for the cold Christmas air, Sophie hugged her and gave me a small kiss. I could see her eyes were wet as Melody and I went off. Christmas dinner with my folks was always a big thing. My mom's and dad's families always got along well and were all close friends. In this moment, amidst the family, laughter, and warmth, the earlier tension began to feel distant. While helping Melody with her coat, a clarity washed over me. Perhaps it wasn't about the past disputes or the cold looks exchanged that morning. It was about these small acts, a gift from a so-called enemy, the laughter of our child, the shared looks of understanding with Sophie that stitched the fabric of our lives together. The dinner table buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses. My parents, always the gracious hosts, welcomed everyone with open arms. As stories were shared and plates passed around, I couldn't help but think about the earlier events of the day. The recognition in Daniel's eyes, the accidental kindness he showed by gifting Melody a doll, and Sophie's hint of tears, all seemed to weave a complex tapestry of emotions and realities. It made me ponder the intricate connections we share with each other, sometimes visible, sometimes not. As the night drew on and Melody's laughter filled the room, mixing with the voices of family and friends, I realized that despite the complexities, what truly mattered was the love and the shared moments of joy. It was a reminder that even in the face of adversities and unexpected turns, the essence of life lies in these connections and shared experiences. In a quiet moment, watching snow fall gently outside, a sense of peace settled over me. The day's tensions, the conflicts, and the unexpected resemblances all seemed to find their place in the larger scheme of things. It was a Christmas that unfolded layers of emotions and thoughts, leaving me with a deeper understanding of relationships, kindness, and the unexpected ways our lives intertwine. My mom's big brother and his wife were really close to my dad's only sister and her man. They all first met at my folks' wedding, and since then they became real tight. You seem a bit down, kid. All good? My dad, who used to manage people at work, could always tell how someone was feeling. I didn't want to dive deep into my feelings, but I knew he'd worry all night if I didn't share. So I opened up about how much I looked like this guy, Daniel Levesque, and my mixed feelings about the doll he gave to Melody for Christmas. Dad listened, and in his wise way, he helped me see things clearer with just a few words. Look, you got your answer to the why question now. That night, Sophie was with him, his looking like you probably made it feel less strange for her. And about feeling bad for not being nicer when he brings stuff for Melody, remember, you didn't do anything wrong here. It's not on you to fix anything. He's the one who should be trying. Dad's advice always took a bit to sink in. Over the next months, I started feeling a bit better about the whole thing and wasn't as mad at Daniel as before. A week after Jacob's first birthday, Melody, who was just 4 but could talk really well, and I had an interesting chat. Hey, Melody, when Daniel comes over, does he hang out for a while? Does he ever have dinner with you guys? Nope, he never stays. Just picks up Jacob, then leaves, she said. So Daniel and your mom aren't close? No, they just talk a bit, only about Jacob. And is he nice to you? I felt I had to ask. Dad's insight on dealing with tough feelings and the little talks with Melody helped me start to deal with the complex ties and emotions in our blended families. Yeah, he always says hi and wants to know what I did all week, but he never digs deeper because his visits are quick. All right. And does your mom get sad when he's gone? Yeah, she ends up crying because she misses Jacob, but she cries even more after you leave. Right then, there was a knock at the door. It was Jasmine, the kid living below us, coming to ask if Melody could play. Go on, have fun with her, I told Melody, so Sophie wasn't over me yet. That thought gave me a mixed feeling of guilt and a bit of joy, though I wished she'd move on since I had no plans of going back to her and taking care of someone else's child. By the end of summer, we got the hard news that my last granddad, my mom's dad, had to be moved to a special place because his Alzheimer's got too tough for the people at his current home to handle. Since my work was close to that place, I decided to visit him at least once a week. It was something that would make my mom feel better. A few days after he moved in, I met Roxanne, the new nurse looking after him. She was short, with dark hair, very orderly and sharp in her thinking, and had bright blue eyes that shone behind her thick glasses. She was all about her job, but also very private, almost seeming distant. I saw that as a challenge. It took weeks, but I finally got past her defenses, and we started getting along really well. The more I got to know her, the more I was drawn to her. But since she was caring for my grandpa, I felt I couldn't make a move towards anything more personal. When Christmas came around, Sophie had Melody that week and asked if I could pick her up from daycare on Friday afternoon instead of our usual Sunday handover. This was because of her Christmas party. Of course, I agreed. I was glad for the extra moments with Melody. That Friday night, I went to sleep late. I had to see the end of the 2 movies I rented. Yep, those stores were still a thing. Just 10 minutes into bed, my phone lit up with Sophie's call. My heart skipped. Sophie? What's up? You good? Chris, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Her words were all over the place. Back in my college days, studying how stuff works, we joked you needed 3 parts to a real bash: solid, liquid, and air. Sophie's night sounded heavy on the liquid. Or was it air? Soph, what's all this? I asked, a mix of worry and amusement in my voice. I'm sorry I had a baby, Chris. I still love you. You get that, right? You know I do, right? Are you all right, Sophie? Can you get home safe? Yeah, just not yet. I've had a bit too much, I think. She giggled. Sophie, want me to drive you home? I pushed. No, Chantal's husband is on it. Hope he keeps it clean in the car. She laughed out loud. Then, silence. She hung up. I knew she still had feelings for me, even if she'd never say it again. Was it pride, or was shame keeping her quiet? That was a road I didn't want to go down. I stopped myself from calling her the next day. Didn't want her to think I was hovering or spying. Maybe her night ended with someone else. But that was her life. Though, not gonna lie, it stung a bit. Around 1 p.m. the next day, Sophie rang me up. Hey, Chris? My phone tells me I called you last night around 1 a.m. Really sorry if I woke you. Just needed to say sorry." Her voice was full of regret. "It's cool, Soph. I was up anyway, just finished some movies." "Oh, okay, that's good. Guess I had a bit too much." "Yeah, a tiny bit," I said with a light laugh, trying to cut through the awkward. We both knew there was more between the lines, a shared past and emotions left unspoken. Our conversation danced around the edges of a deeper truth, each word heavy with meaning, yet neither of us fully diving into what really lay in our hearts. The call ended, but the silence spoke volumes. It was a delicate balance between moving on and holding on to memories too precious to let go. "Did I say something bad?" she asked slowly. Sophie often forgot things after drinking a bit too much. "Nope, all good. You just said you were having a good time. Did you get home okay?" "Yes, Chantal's husband drove me," she answered. "All right, good. Thanks for making sure," I replied. There's another thing. The plan is you bring Melody to me on the 23rd because she's with me on Christmas Eve. How about you join us for dinner that night? I think Melody would be happy to see both her parents together." This was new. Sophie and I were okay. Okay as in polite, but not really friends. We had unspokenly decided it was best to keep a bit of space between us to avoid any old hurt. We hadn't shared a meal since that last tough Friday night 2 years ago. Truth is, I felt better about her now. But still, the idea didn't sit right with me. After a moment, I agreed, thinking of Melody. "Thanks for the invite, Sophie. I'll be there," I said. "Jacob won't be there, by the way. Daniel can't bring him until lunch on Saturday," she added. My hesitation suddenly left. Was I really worried about facing an 18-month-old kid? That dinner never happened. My grandpa died on the morning of the 23rd of December. I rang Sophie to let her know. She said she was sorry and got that I had to cancel dinner to be with my mom that night. It was a sad Christmas, ending with a funeral in early January. "Hello, Roxanne speaking. Hey, Roxanne, Chris Harvey here. How's it going?" I waited until the end of January to reach out to Roxanne. I had to skip town for work for a good chunk of January. Right when I was gone, a new Korean spot popped up near my office, raking in rave reviews. Knowing she was all about Asian food, it seemed like a choice pick. Our dinner that night ended up being real nice, even if it started off a bit stiff. This was my first time out with someone new since Sophie and I got together 12 years back when we were just 19. To say I was green at dating again would be an understatement. But soon enough, we found our groove in chatting. Talking about my grandpa being gone kind of paved the way for topics we'd never hit before. We saw each other a few more times, and on Valentine's, she ended up staying over after we got intimate for the first time. It was a whole different vibe from being with Sophie, but pinning down how was tricky. I managed to keep this under wraps from Melody for a spell. For whatever reason, I didn't want Sophie catching wind I was seeing someone new. But nothing lasts forever. One night at Place d'Art, this big-deal music venue in the heart of Montreal, we bumped into Sophie's sister Natalie and her man Mark. Natalie taught French, just like Sophie, but at high school. Mark's job was a mystery, but what was crystal clear was the guy was a total pain, ace at making folks squirm. My dynamic with Natalie was always kind of off, and why was beyond me. But there I was, having to say hi and bring Roxanne into the picture. Mark, being the tool he is, made her flush with his look-over, like he tended to do. Did I say he was an idiot? How fast Sophie got the news, I can't say, but she kept mum about it. I noticed she seemed a bit down in the weeks that followed, yet she stayed silent about my goings-on. My life took a turn for the serious after Roxanne and I were open about us. She was younger than me by 4 years. Before we met, she had ended a long stretch with someone else about half a year ago, and she didn't have kids. She'd joke about hearing her biological clock tick the loudest in her life, but she'd quickly say that at 27, she wasn't rushing into motherhood. Life found its rhythm, and for a year and a half, things went smoothly. The next summer, during a trip to San Francisco, I planned a big surprise for Roxanne after a lovely dinner at a famous seafood spot on Fisherman's Wharf. I had everything set, even asking the waiter for a moment so I could pop the question between the main course and dessert. Her answer was a thrilled, "Yes, yes, yes, yes," that got everyone around us to start clapping and offering their best wishes. Melody was thrilled when Roxanne and I told her we were getting married the next April. She was beyond excited when we asked if she would be the lead flower girl, already picturing her dress and eager to tell her friends at school. 2 weeks later, I went to pick up Melody from her mom's. Roxanne stayed in the car while I went to the door. I noticed Sophie seemed quieter than usual. At first, I didn't link it to the wedding news. As I drove away, I saw Sophie in the window, probably thinking I couldn't see her well, but I noticed she was crying. Roxanne, busy chatting with Melody, hadn't seen Sophie's reaction. That night, in Roxanne's bed, I couldn't sleep while she was fast asleep next to me. The image of Sophie crying stuck with me. Life got back into its groove, this time with everyone focused on Melody starting elementary school. Sophie and I had worked through the extra tasks without ever touching on my soon-to-be wedding. Yet I could sense things were getting harder. "Does Mom have a boyfriend?" I asked Melody one night, trying to keep it light. "No, she's alone," Melody answered back. "Does she go out with friends sometimes?" "Not much. She looks after me and Jacob. She's always at home. She cries lots." "I don't know why," she said, a hint of sadness in her voice. Suddenly it hit me. Melody, now 6, couldn't recall the time Sophie and I were together. Sophie and I as a couple were never in her memory. This thought almost knocked me over. We often forget how big our choices affect kids, simply because they see time differently than adults do. The following week, Roxanne got awesome news. She was promoted to assistant head nurse in her department. We celebrated at her most liked place to eat that evening. The thing is, this job will change my hours a lot. I'll still work nights and some weekends, but what I do each day might be different. I'll find out my new hours after Christmas, she shared as we waited for our dessert. In that case, I was going to book our honeymoon tickets next week, but it seems wise to wait until you get your new hours, I said. That turned out to be a smart move. At our Christmas party in mid-December, I found myself talking with work friends. Roxanne couldn't make it because she had to fill in for 2 sick colleagues with a night shift. The party was in a fancy hotel downtown. That Friday night, the hotel had 2 parties going on in different rooms. Through these shifts and celebrations, life's complexities unfolded, reflecting both the joy of accomplishments and the shadow of past decisions. Life, with its mix of joy and sorrow, was ever present, teaching us the value of understanding and patience. The year had been one for the books, and our boss, true to form, wanted to celebrate big. So there we were in the thick of a party where wine and fancy drinks were everywhere you looked. On my way back from the bathroom after having let go of beer number 8, of the 3 I actually drank, I walked straight into a dream. A tall redhead with a smile that could turn winter into summer stood in front of me. "Oops, maybe I should take it easy on the wine, huh?" "I'm Catherine," she said, her hand outstretched. No, the fault's mine. I should have looked where I was going. I'm Christian," I replied. We got to talking. She was from the law firm partying next door. A lawyer, no less, with a focus on international business deals. The moment I said I handled international sales for an engineering firm, our chat kicked into high gear. It felt like we had known each other for ages as we grabbed another drink, then another, diving deep into personal territory. And then, well, the details got fuzzy. When I woke up the next day, trying to piece together my last memory, I found myself in a bed not my own. Or was it mine? It didn't matter much, honestly. She was there with me, and that's what counted. "Slept well, stranger?" That voice, it was like a splash of cold water, but in a good way. "Hold on a minute! That wasn't Roxanne's voice. My eyes barely open, I saw a flash of red hair. Ah, shoot! Her name, right, Catherine. Her laugh cut through my panic. Looks like someone had more fun than they remember. Don't fret, you were memorable, she teased. Did we? Yes, twice, believe it or not. Ah, really? Oh, wow, that's good? Absolutely. Miraculously, I didn't have the hangover from hell. Quite the opposite, actually. Catherine got up and rushed into the shower. I was still trying to piece together last night's events when she came out, all set to go. She gave me a quick kiss, said she had a blast, but had to dash because it was nearly 10 and her crew was meeting for breakfast. Don't fret about the room, my work took care of it. It's paid for. I think we need to leave by noon. Last night was wonderful, Chris. Thanks a ton. She was halfway out when she glanced back. Also, don't worry, darling. I'm taking precautions, she said with a playful wink, and then she was out the door. I showered and put on my clothes from yesterday, not planning to stay overnight. While leaving, my phone buzzed. It was Roxanne. Guilt washed over me like a flood. It hit me hard that I'd cheated on her. "Hey, love, how was work?" I asked, trying to sound normal. It was all right. Nothing much happened. There was a slight edge to her voice, or maybe that was just my guilt talking. "How was your party? Did it go late?" she wanted to know. "It was good. A really nice meal," I replied. Then I goofed up. "No, it didn't last long. I was in by midnight." There was a pause. "Okay, got it. I'm busy today. Have to run," she said, her tone changing a bit. "All right, bye." That was one of the most awkward calls ever. Did she suspect anything? It seemed impossible. She was working all night. But this moment, feeling the weight of what I'd done, heightened everything. Every look, every word felt loaded. And really deep within, the trouble wasn't about getting caught. It was about facing the truth of my actions, the betraying, the sneaking around. If only talking about it could make things right. But words, especially those left unsaid, have their own way of echoing, revealing truths we try to hide. So there lay the heart of it all. The need to confront, to admit to the missteps, the fear of unraveling what we hold dear. Yet it's in these trials we find our true selves, our capacity for forgiveness, understanding, and maybe the strength to rebuild. After working nights, she often goes back to her place, just a quick 5-minute drive from work. In contrast, my place takes about half an hour to reach. Driving home was tough. My mind kept drifting off. I stopped at a small eatery for some breakfast. I wasn't really hungry. The events from last night were eating at me, even though I couldn't remember them all that well. When I got home, something felt off. I couldn't tell why, but it just didn't feel right. Then I saw why as I walked into my bedroom. A handwritten note was on my bed. "Chris, last night you did almost the last thing I thought you would. You were with another woman. Then this morning you did the thing I least expected. You lied to me. How do I know? Work was slow last night. My team said they could manage without me. I had a dress ready just in case I could leave early. So I changed, got ready, and drove to your Christmas party to surprise you. But you didn't see me. You were too busy with that woman in red. I watched as you two left together. I left in tears. I came by this morning to maybe sort things out. Then I found you hadn't been home. I called you and you lied. Right to my face. I've taken my stuff from your place. I'm leaving yours in a box at my work for you to get. Your apartment key is on your nightstand. It hits me now. You left Sophie after a single night. Sure, she was pregnant, but she never lied to you. Goodbye, Rox." I read the letter over 3 times, then lay back staring at the ceiling. My mind was blank with shock and disgust at what I had done. I tried calling Roxanne. Of course, she didn't pick up. I left her a message. In the quiet of my room, with the weight of Rox's words sinking in, I began to truly reckon with the gravity of my actions. How had I let things get so out of hand? The surprise and pain in Rox's letter underlined a reality I couldn't dodge. It wasn't just about what I had done last night. It was about the trust I had shattered. The simplicity of her words made the betrayal clear, leaving no space for excuses or doubt. Guilt weighed heavily on me, a constant reminder of the damage I had inflicted not only on Rox but on myself. As I lay there, I realized the path ahead wouldn't be simple. I had to face the consequences of my choices, learn from them, and try to find a way to move forward, knowing well that some actions can't be undone and some apologies might never be accepted. The road to redemption was long and uncertain, but it was a journey I had to embark on, step by painstaking step, in the hope of finding forgiveness, not just from Rox, but from myself too. We often chatted on Messenger, but when I tried to reach out to her, I found she had cut me off. I sent a text begging to chat, saying I didn't want to explain because there was no excuse for my actions, but I was desperate to say sorry. Then a second burst of messages. A third came that night, and a fourth the next day. More followed each day for a week. She stayed silent. I went to where she worked only to hear she had taken a few days off and left clear orders not to let me in. The only word I got was a note from her place's management about a box left for me to be picked up in 48 hours or it'd be thrown out. I went there, grabbed the box, and tried to buzz Roxanne's flat, but no one answered. My mood was awful the next day, picking up Melody from Sophie's. Sophie's worried look hit me hard. A new wave of guilt crashed over me, maybe even stronger than before. I couldn't meet Sophie's eyes. What kind of damn hypocrite am I? That thought hit me hard. Guilt washed over me all day. Even Melody noticed I was down. "Daddy, you look sad." "You're so sweet, my little one. I've got a big issue to sort out." "So yeah, you're right, I'm not okay. But I'll be all right." "Why don't you call Roxy? You're usually happy when she's around." "I can't right now. It's complicated. I'll tell you about it later, all right?" She gave me a look I hadn't seen in her eyes before. She was thinking, piecing things together. That night, after I tucked her in, I lingered in the living room, nursing a glass of red. Oddly, I missed Rox and felt bad about her, but even more so for Sophie. Sophie drank wine and slept with Daniel Levesque while with me. I had a beer and was with Catherine while engaged to Roxanne. Was my action any less wrong? Sophie risked pregnancy with another man. I risked the same with another woman. Was my choice any less reckless? Some could say Sophie and I were different because she was my wife. But I was promised to Roxanne. Did that really change anything? No, the true difference lay in honesty. Sophie was open with me while I hid the truth from Roxanne like a coward. "Daddy, why haven't we seen Roxy in a week?" Melody asked one Thursday. There it was, a moment to choose again. This time I chose honesty. Dropping to her level, I said, "Roxanne and I are over, sweetheart. That's why I've been sad." "So, no wedding?" "No, love. She won't be back," I admitted with a heavy heart. Melody hugged me, crying. "I thought you both were excited to marry," she managed between sobs. "We were, but I made a mistake, one I can't explain now, but will when you're older, okay?" Her big, teary eyes met mine. My heart ached. She nodded, and I held her close. Later, we snuggled on the couch, watching Frozen yet again, before I kissed her goodnight. Was it worth saying that Christmas that year wasn't the best for me? I was solo in my flat on the 24th since my folks were down in Florida. On the 25th, Sophie rang me up. "Hey Chris, Melody told me last night you and Roxanne broke up." "All good?" "Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks for checking in. That's really nice of you," I replied. "You flying solo tonight? I know Melody was supposed to be with me the 24th and 25th, and with you for New Year's since your parents are out, but we can change plans. I'm heading to a friend's place tonight. Want to join? Caroline and Patrick will be there." "Thanks, Soph. But honestly, I'm not up for a party. I'd just bring the mood down. Plus, I've got a lot to ponder. But pass my hello to them," I said. "If you change your mind or just want to chat, hit me up, okay?" "Will do. Thanks a ton, Soph. Happy Christmas." I was relieved when Christmas wrapped up. I had a big trip coming up in January, February. It was a long haul. Boston, Raleigh, Dallas, Mexico, Sao Paulo, Buenos Aires, then back via Toronto. It was a 3-week trip. Sophie was good about shifting our schedule with Melody. Waiting for my flight back to Montreal at Toronto Pearson, I was browsing the news on my tablet. A buddy had emailed me saying his mom had passed. I decided to look up the obituary section in the paper. As I searched for my friend's mother, I saw a face that shocked me. Daniel Levesque. The notice read that he had died by accident. I got back home at 7 p.m. that Friday. My plan was to pick up Melody early the next day so we could have breakfast together. I decided to call Sophie. "Hey, just landed. How's everything?" "I'm all right. It's been a long day. Want to chat with Melody?" she said. "No, it's fine. I'll see her in the morning. I wanted to check on you, though. I read about Daniel passing away. Why didn't you tell me last week? Why should I have told you about him? He's just my second kid's dad. He's not my partner. Haven't I said that enough?" she replied sharply. "Hey, sorry. I wasn't trying to suggest anything. I just wanted to say I'm here to help if you need it. I know he wasn't your partner. Let's not worry about it. I'll grab Melody tomorrow." "Sorry, I didn't mean to snap at you. My apologies. And yes, it's been tough. I had to tell little Jacob that his dad won't come back. He's only 3. He misses his dad, but I don't think he fully gets that he won't see him again. It's been rough for him and for me." "It's all right, Soph. I get it. And how's Melody?" "I know she's close to Jacob. She didn't say anything about Daniel. She's been a star with her brother. And no, she didn't tell you because I asked her not to." I took in all Sophie had shared, understanding the strain and sadness in her voice. I promised myself to be there for them in any way they needed. Tomorrow I would start by just being there for Melody and by extension for all of them. It was a reminder of how life's complexities and sorrows bind us, asking for empathy and support where we can give it. I needed to share this news myself. Talking about Daniel was always a touchy topic. I get that. Still, finding out through the newspapers wasn't what I hoped for. It bugs me when folks tiptoe around me, scared I'll snap. It feels like they see me as a kid. I got why Sophie did it, but it irked me, being treated like I was on the edge of breaking. Or was I upset with myself for giving her that impression in the first place? I mulled over going to the funeral home to say I'm sorry for their loss. After a chat with Mr. Roy on Wednesday, I had taken a couple of days off to gather myself. He nudged me towards going. Chris, why not go? It could be a step towards healing old wounds. Reaching out and offering a smile to someone who's hurt you ain't easy, but once you do, it's tough to hang on to anger and deny forgiveness. And with forgiveness comes peace. Mr. Roy's wisdom wasn't for nothing. He's known for his good advice. Maybe I should have turned to him more before. So I showed up at the funeral home late Saturday morning, not telling Melody or Sophie. The room was half full. Sophie was the first person I spotted. She seemed shocked to see me. Melody and Jacob were there too, Jacob looking a bit lost. I tried to chat with him, but he hid behind his mom. I didn't push it. Sophie mentioned Daniel's mom had passed away years ago and his dad was here. I knew this from a private investigator's report, but I kept that to myself. As I moved to meet Daniel's dad, a couple of people stopped me, asking if I was Daniel's brother. It was a strange moment, full of heavy hearts and awkward silences. But beneath it all, there was this thread of possibility. Could this be the first step towards letting go of the past? Standing there, in a room full of memories and what-ifs, I realized this was about more than just Daniel. It was about finding a way to heal, to move forward, even if it meant facing the people and places that reminded me of old scars. So I took a deep breath, ready to extend that hand Mr. Roy talked about. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new, a path towards forgiveness and ultimately peace. Nope, not me. Just no Daniel, I said with a nice smile. Oops, sorry. But you two could be twins. That was odd. I made my way over to the dad and said how sorry I was, telling him I was Sophie's ex. Mr. Levesque paused but then shook my hand. It's strange, you know. You kinda look and act like my boy, but I guess hearing that doesn't make you feel good, Mr. Harvey, right? You must have really disliked my son for what happened to your marriage? Before me was a man who liked straight talk. He wouldn't settle for less. You see, Mr. Levesque, I think it's better to believe my marriage fell apart because of a mix of things, not just what your son did. I don't blame Daniel. He just saw a chance and went for it. Who's to say you or I wouldn't have done the same in his shoes? I know I can't. Mr. Levesque looked deep into my eyes for a bit, then clasped my hand in his. You're speaking wise words. You're giving me something to think about. I wish you well, Mr. Harvey. The next spring, I had to change the plan for looking after my kid. I was on a bunch of short trips to the USA, gone most work days, so my daughter Melody and I hung out mostly on weekends. That weekend, I had promised to take Melody to a buddy of my dad who owned a farm so she could ride horses. She couldn't stop talking about it all week. She was all set when I got to Sophie's place that Saturday morning. I'm all set, Dad. I'm so excited. She was over the moon. How are you, Chris? Sophie looked kind of down. Then I saw Jacob. He was just standing there by the kitchen door, tears rolling down. Seeing a kid cry breaks my heart. When I looked at Sophie, I got it right away. We said our goodbyes and left fast, not wanting to make things hurt more. We had a great day at the ranch. Melody loved every bit of it, yet I couldn't stop thinking about Jacob. Till then, he was just the baby who made my family dream impossible. But seeing him with tears in his eyes hit me hard. This little boy was never really wanted. He came into the world as an unwelcome surprise. He never had a full family. I know Sophie was a loving and devoted mom, doing a great job with him just like with Melody. But the boy had lost his dad. He had no one to take him horseback riding. For the first time, I saw things from his view and realized this poor boy never wanted and never caused the trouble that came with his birth. He was just a kid. He wasn't the reason our family broke apart. Driving home the next day, after dropping Melody at Sophie's, I started to question if I had been focusing on the wrong things all these years. Was I really doing the right thing, or was I just doing what was expected of me? The real question I never asked myself: was I happy? No matter what I thought was right or what society accepted, was what I was doing making me feel good? Was making sure I looked good more important than this little boy's happiness? More than my daughter's? More than my ex's, no, my wife's? More than my own joy? These thoughts chased me all the next week. I'm an adult. It was time to act like one. I was back at Sophie's early the next Saturday. Melody's 7th birthday was coming. I had promised to take her to the zoo. Jacob was holding on to Melody, tears in his eyes, not letting her go. I bent down to his level. "Jacob, did Melody tell you I'm taking her to see animals today? Want to come?" His eyes sparkled. He began to jump around with joy. "I know Melody loves big animals with long noses. Want to see them too?" He nodded hard, smiling big. "And what about Mommy? Should she come with us?" I asked. "Oh, I'm not up for going out, Chris," Sophie said. "I think we can make it work. Let's all go for some fun. Why not?" It was a great day. Jacob was scared of the big-nosed animals, but he loved the tall ones with long necks. We went to Sophie's house that night. After the kids were asleep, Sophie and I had wine in her living room. It was time for a very needed talk. "What happened with Roxanne, Chris?" I looked at her for a bit. Then, I knew it was time for the truth. The kind of moment when you see everything clearly, knowing it's going to change everything. "I was unfaithful," I said calmly. Sophie sipped her wine, quiet, letting me continue. I told her everything, no making it sound better than it was, just the truth. Plus, what I had thought about in the past months, why I came to Daniel's goodbye, and why I started talking to Jacob. Sophie listened without cutting me off. When I finished, she looked at me, her eyes not warm, and took another sip. "I really want to scold you, Chris. I wish I could make you see how wrong you were, but I won't. There's no point. You've already beaten yourself up." "Yep, Soph, I've learned a lot over time. Wish we knew this stuff 4.5 years back," Sophie said, turning her gaze away. "Plan to keep learning," I told her. Next week, I was away. In my hotel room in Atlanta on Monday night, for the first time in 4.5 years, I let my mind wander to thoughts of Sophie in a way I hadn't allowed before. The feeling hit me instantly. Thinking of her for the first time in years, I touched myself and experienced an intense climax, more powerful than any I remembered with Roxanne. That meant something big. The next day, I texted Sophie. "Hey, Soph, can we go out for dinner Friday night? Think you can find someone for the kids?" She responded with smileys that said everything I needed to know. Melody was over the moon when I told her she'd be the flower girl. Jacob was just as happy to hear he'd be the ring bearer. It had been more than a year since that day at the zoo when Sophie and I decided to see if our marriage still had a spark after all that time. Turned out it did, because things reignited fast. I stood in Sophie's parents' garden, watching her walk down the aisle again, her father beaming proudly. All our parents were thrilled we were giving things another go, and I hadn't heard a single negative word about remarrying a woman who had another man's child. I guess by then, everyone, including me, had realized life is messy, and it's up to us how we deal with it. Jacob had lost his grandfather last autumn, just 9 months after his son. That left Jacob without a dad or relatives on his dad's side. Over the past year, I'd grown really close to him. He was a funny, clever kid who adored his big sister. After the wedding was done and before we all sat to eat, Sophie and I went to have a chat with Jacob. "Jacob, now that I've married your mom, I've got something to ask," I began. He gave me a look full of wonder. "How would you feel if I became your dad?" He paused, letting the idea sink in. Then his eyes went big and he jumped into my arms in a hug. "Could I call you Dad?" "Yes, you can, for sure. You see this paper?" I showed him the adoption paper, proof that Sophie and I had made it official that I was adopting Jacob. "You might not get all these words yet, but this paper means I'm your dad now, and you're my boy." His face lit up with joy. Everyone around started clapping. Sophie, Melody, Jacob, and I were now a tight-knit family, all wrapped up in a big hug. This moment was more than just words on a paper. It was the start of our new life together, one where love was the main thread holding us close. Jacob, with his big eyes shining, now had a dad he could look up to. and I had a son to share my world with. It was a new chapter for us all, filled with promises of shared laughter, lessons, and love. As we stepped back to join the others, the cheers and smiles from our friends and family wrapped around us like the warmest blanket, marking the beginning of our journey as a family united not just by vows, but by heart. Hey, listeners! If you enjoyed watching this video and want to stay updated with our latest content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss out on what's coming next. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video with Queen Cheating Tales.